The orbital station Threshold 9 had seen better days, much better days. Eli Grant stood in the doorway of his repair shop, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that was probably dirtier than his palms, and watched the main corridor through eyes that had grown too accustomed to disappointment. The overhead lights flickered in their eternal rhythm. 3 seconds on, 1 second of darkness, repeat, casting the passageway in a strobing twilight that made everything look like a badly edited memory. Threshold 9 floated at the edge of Jarkai Imperial space, a forgotten relic from the First Contact Wars, now relegated to a way station for smugglers, refugees, and the kind of people the galaxy preferred to forget. Humans like Eli fit that last category perfectly. "Hey, human!" The voice cut through the metallic hum of the station's dying ventilation system. Eli didn't need to look up to know who it was. The Jarkai had a particular way of pronouncing the word human that made it sound like an insult, a curse, a joke all rolled into one. Eli turned slowly. 3 Jarkai stood in the corridor, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming even in the poor light. They were young ones, probably low-level enforcers for one of the station's crime syndicates. The lead one, a male with violet markings across his thorax that indicated minor noble blood, clicked his mandibles in what passed for a Jarkai smile. "My speeder is making a grinding sound," the alien said, his secondary arms gesturing dismissively. "Fix it." Eli had been on Threshold 9 for 5 years. 5 years since his colony transport had been raided by pirates. 5 years since he'd lost everything. 5 years since he'd washed up here with nothing but a toolkit and the clothes on his back. In that time, he'd learned exactly 2 things about surviving among the Jarkai. Keep your head down and never ever expect gratitude. "Bring it in," Eli said quietly, stepping aside to let them into his shop. "I'll take a look." The shop was small, barely 15 feet across, crammed with salvaged parts, broken machinery, and the accumulated debris of 1,000 repair jobs. In the back corner sat Eli's pride and shame, a Mark 7 combat drone, modified beyond recognition, held together with wire, hope, and some truly inspired engineering. It was the only thing of value he owned, and he'd never had the heart to sell it, even when food ran short. The Jarkai shoved past him, and the leader kicked over a toolbox on his way through. Screwdrivers and wrenches scattered across the floor. None of them apologized. None of them even looked back. "This place smells like poverty," one of them muttered in their clicking language. They didn't know Eli had learned to understand it years ago. Most humans couldn't master the complex mandible sounds, but understanding, that just took time and attention. "The grinding sound," Eli said in Galactic Standard. "Is it constant or only during acceleration?" The leader turned, his compound eyes reflecting Eli's face back at him 1,000 times over. "Does it matter? Just fix it. And if it's not ready by morning, I'll tell Station Master Vexerel that you're running an unlicensed operation." That was how it worked. The threat was always there, hanging over everything. One word to the wrong person, and Eli would be on a transport to a labor prison, or worse, simply spaced and forgotten. Humans had no rights this far out. No representation, no voice. "I'll have it ready," Eli said. The Jarkai left their speeder, a sleek hover vehicle worth more than Eli would earn in 10 years, and departed without another word. Eli listened to their clicking laughter fade down the corridor, then knelt to pick up his scattered tools. His hands shook slightly. They always did after encounters like that, a tremor of suppressed anger and humiliation that he couldn't afford to express. He was 42 years old, and he'd once been an engineer on colony ships, designing life support systems that kept thousands alive in the void. Now he fixed speeders for aliens who wouldn't spit on him if he was on fire. The speeder's problem was simple: a cracked repulsor coil, 5-minute fix, if you knew what you were doing. Eli knew what he was doing. He'd always been good with machines, better than he'd ever been with people. Machines made sense, they broke for understandable reasons and could be repaired with logic and skill. People, on the other hand, were mysteries he'd given up trying to solve. He had the speeder fixed in 20 minutes, then spent the next 3 hours working on other jobs: a broken door seal, a malfunctioning water recycler, a data pad with a cracked screen. Small jobs, cheap jobs, the kind that kept you fed but never let you save enough to leave. Night cycle came. On Threshold 9, night was just a dimming of the already inadequate lights, a signal for the worst elements to emerge from whatever holes they hid in during the day. Eli locked his shop's door, a flimsy thing that wouldn't stop anyone who really wanted in, and settled onto the cot in the back corner. His dinner was a protein bar that tasted like cardboard and disappointment. He ate it slowly, making it last, and stared at his combat drone. He'd found it in a scrap heap 3 years ago, barely functional, its AI core wiped and its weapons systems fried. Bit by bit, he'd rebuilt it, scavenging parts, trading favors, teaching himself military-grade engineering from salvaged manuals. It could fly, it could shoot, it could protect someone if it needed to, but it was his, and he'd never had a reason to let it go. Eli closed his eyes, listening to the station groan and shudder around him. Threshold 9 was dying, just like everything else out here, just like him. Slow, forgotten, irrelevant. He didn't know that tomorrow 2 children would stumble into his shop and change everything. He didn't know that kindness, his one remaining weakness, would be the thing that finally mattered. He slept and dreamed of better days that felt like lies his memory had invented to make the present bearable. When morning cycle arrived, Eli woke to the sound of someone trying to break into his shop. Not unusual. Theft was as common as breathing on Threshold 9. What was unusual was how quietly they were doing it. No brute force, no plasma cutters, just the soft scrape of something delicate working at the lock mechanism. Eli rolled off his cot, grabbed a heavy wrench, and moved to the door. Through the small reinforced window, he could see 2 small figures hunched over his lock. Children. His grip on the wrench loosened slightly. Jarkai children, he realized as he got closer. Young ones may be equivalent to 8 or 9 years old in human terms. Their exoskeletons were still soft, showing their age, and they wore simple grey cloaks that were far too large for them, hoods pulled up to hide their faces. One of them, the smaller one, looked up suddenly, and Eli saw terror in those compound eyes. Not mischief, not hunger, pure, liquid terror. He made a decision that would haunt and save him in equal measure. Eli opened the door. The 2 children froze, caught in the act, their small hands still on his lock. They stared up at him, and Eli saw that they were females, their markings barely visible yet beneath their juvenile plating. The larger one stepped protectively in front of her sister, raising her tiny arms in a defensive posture that would have been adorable if not for the genuine fear radiating from both of them. "Please," the larger one whispered in broken galactic standard. "Please, we need to hide." Eli glanced down the corridor. Empty for now, but that could change in an instant. Every instinct told him to shut the door, to protect himself, to not get involved in whatever this was. He stepped aside. "Get in. Quickly." They didn't need to be told twice. The 2 children darted past him into the shop, and the smaller one immediately stumbled, her legs giving out. She collapsed against a workbench, and Eli saw the injury. A deep gash across her lower thorax, still leaking the pale blue blood of the Jarkai. "What happened to you?" Eli asked, closing and locking the door behind them. "They found us," the larger sister said, her voice steadier now but still edged with panic. She couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall, her exoskeleton mottled with stress patterns. "The assassins, they killed our guards. Everyone. Mother told us to run, so we ran." Assassins, guards, mother. These weren't street children. Eli's stomach tightened with a cold understanding that he'd just opened his door to something far more dangerous than simple theft. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. The larger girl lifted her chin, a gesture of pride that seemed instinctive despite her fear. "I am Shiara, daughter of Kael'thar, warlord of the 3rd Fleet. This is my sister, Liseth, and if they find us, they will kill us. They will kill anyone who helps us." Eli stared at them. Kael'thar. Everyone in Imperial space knew that name. The Butcher of 6, the Conqueror of the Outer Reaches, a Jarkai warlord so powerful that even the Empress herself was said to fear him. "You picked a terrible place to hide," Eli said finally. "You are human," Shiara replied, as if that explained everything. "Nobody watches the humans." She wasn't wrong. Eli was invisible to the powers that moved through Threshold 9. Just another piece of the background, too insignificant to notice, too broken to matter. The smaller girl, Liseth, whimpered, and Eli saw that her wound was worse than he'd thought. The bleeding wasn't stopping. Jarkai blood clotted quickly, but not when the injury was this deep. "I need to treat that," Eli said, moving to his medical supplies. They were human-specific, mostly, but he'd picked up some xenomedical knowledge over the years, enough to know that if he didn't close that wound soon, this child would die in his shop. "Why would you help us?" Shiara asked, suspicion and hope warring in her voice. "We are Jarkai. Your people and mine have been enemies for generations." Eli pulled out a thermal stapler, some antiseptic gel and a bandage roll. Your people have been enemies with everyone for generations. Doesn't mean children deserve to die in back-alley machine shops. He knelt beside Lyseth, who flinched away from him. Her compound eyes were wide with pain and fear, and for a moment Eli saw his own daughter's face superimposed over the alien features. Sarah, dead now, 5 years in the grave, killed when the pirates attacked. She'd been 7. It's okay, Eli said softly, switching to his broken Jarkai. The words came out mangled, his human mouth unable to make the proper clicking sounds, but understandable enough. I help. Something in Lyseth's expression shifted. Maybe it was hearing her own language, however poorly spoken. Maybe it was simply exhaustion. She nodded, just barely, and let Eli examine the wound. It was bad. Deep cut, probably from a monofilament blade, the kind assassins favored, because they could slice through even Jarkai plating. Eli cleaned it as gently as he could, applied the gel, hoping its universal properties would work on non-human biology, and used the thermal stapler to close the worst of it. Lyseth didn't make a sound, though her whole body trembled. You need real medical care, Eli said when he was done. I'm not a doctor. We cannot go to a medical center, Shiara said flatly. They will be watching. They are always watching. Who's they? The Crimson Hand, assassins from the Imperial Court. Someone wants our father to suffer, so they sent killers to murder his children while he is away commanding the fleet. Eli sat back on his heels, processing this. A political assassination. Children caught in the crossfire of imperial power games. It was exactly the kind of thing that happened out here, where law was a suggestion and power was the only currency that mattered. Your father, Eli said carefully, does he know where you are? Shiara's mandibles clicked in distress. No. Communications are blocked. The assassins control the station's systems. We have been hiding for 2 days. They will find us eventually. They always do. 2 days. These children had been alone, hunted, for 2 days. Eli thought of Sarah again, wondered what she would have done in their place, wondered if anyone would have helped her. How many assassins? He asked. We saw 4, but there could be more. 4 professional killers against 1 broken-down human mechanic and 2 terrified children. Eli looked at his combat drone sitting in the corner, then back at the girls. A terrible idea was forming in his mind, the kind of idea that got people killed. But then he'd been dead for 5 years already, just hadn't had the decency to stop breathing yet. I can get you off the station, Eli said slowly, but I'll need time to prep a shuttle, and I'll need to make sure they're not watching the docking bays. Why would you do this? Shiara asked again, more insistent now. We are nothing to you. Helping us will only bring you death. Eli stood, walked to his drone and ran his hand over its scarred hull. I had a daughter once, he said quietly. She was about your age. About your sister's age, I mean. Someone killed her because she was in the wrong place when powerful people decided to fight over cargo and territory. Nobody helped her. Nobody even tried. He turned back to face them. Maybe if someone had, things would have been different. Maybe not. But I can help you, so I'm going to help you. That's all there is to it. Shiara stared at him for a long moment, her young mind trying to process a kindness that made no sense in her world. Finally, she bowed her head, a gesture of respect among her people. We will remember this, human. If we survive, we will remember. My name is Eli, he said. Eli Grant, and you're going to survive. I promise you that. It was a promise he had no business making given the odds, but watching Lyseth lean against her sister, exhausted and hurt, and so desperately young, Eli found he didn't care about the odds anymore. The door to his shop rattled. Someone was outside. Someone trying very hard to be quiet about it. Eli grabbed his wrench and gestured for the girls to hide behind his workbench. His heart hammered against his ribs as he approached the door, every nerve screaming at him that this was it, the moment where his stupid compassion finally got him killed. The rattling stopped. Footsteps moved away down the corridor. Eli let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Not yet then, but soon. The assassins were searching, and it was only a matter of time before they searched his shop. He had until dawn to figure out how to save 2 alien princesses with nothing but a rebuilt drone and 5 years of accumulated bitterness. It would have to be enough. It would have to be. Eli spent the next hour moving in careful silence, gathering supplies while the 2 Jarkai children huddled behind his workbench. His mind raced through options, discarding each one as quickly as it formed. The docking bays would be watched. The shuttle services were controlled by the station's crime syndicates, and they'd sell out anyone for the right price. The ventilation shafts were too small for him, and the children were too weak to navigate them alone. Every path led to the same conclusion. They were trapped. Human. Eli, Shi'ara whispered, her voice barely audible over the station's mechanical groaning. They are coming closer. I can hear them. Eli paused, listening. At first he heard nothing but the usual sounds of Threshold 9, but then he caught it. The distinctive click of Jarakai communication, too rhythmic to be casual conversation. It was the tactical clicking of hunters coordinating a search pattern. How many? He asked. Shi'ara's antennae twitched. 3, maybe 4. They are moving through this sector, checking every shop. Eli looked at his door. The lock was basic, civilian grade. It would take a professional about 30 seconds to bypass it. He had no weapons except his tools, no training except what he'd picked up surviving in rough places. Against trained assassins, he was worse than useless. His eyes drifted to the combat drone. Can you fly that? Shi'ara asked, following his gaze. It can fly itself, Eli replied. That's what military AI is for. Problem is, I've never actually tested it in combat. I rebuilt it from scraps. Could work perfectly. Could explode the moment I activate the weapon systems. Better than waiting to die, the girl said with a pragmatism that made Eli's chest ache. She was so young, but she'd already learned the hard mathematics of survival. Liseth stirred, her compound eyes unfocused with pain. Shi'ara, she whispered. I'm cold. Jarakai didn't feel cold the way humans did. Their exoskeletons regulated temperature efficiently. When they said they were cold, it meant shock, blood loss, system failure. Liseth was dying, slowly but certainly, and Eli's crude medical intervention was only buying time. We need to move, Eli said, decision crystallizing. Now, before they finish searching this section. Move where? Shi'ara demanded. You said yourself there is nowhere to go. There's one place they won't think to look, Eli said, pulling up the station schematics on his battered datapad. The old human quarter. It was sealed off 3 years ago after a hull breach. Too damaged to repair, too expensive to properly salvage. Nobody goes there anymore. If there was a hull breach, there is no atmosphere. In most of it, yeah, but the central hub maintained integrity. I helped seal it myself. It's got air barely, and it's off the main sensor grid. We can hide there until I figure out how to get you off this station. Shi'ara clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. How far? 12 corridors. Maybe 15 minutes if we move fast and don't run into patrols. Liseth cannot walk that far. Eli had already thought of that. He pulled out a cargo float, a small anti-grav platform he used for moving heavy equipment. She can ride. It's not comfortable, but it'll work. The clicking outside grew louder. They were running out of time for debate. Help me load the drone onto the float, Eli said, moving to his pride and shame. The combat drone was heavier than it looked. Its armor plating salvaged from a dozen different sources, none of them matching but all of them functional. Together, Eli and Shi'ara managed to maneuver it onto the cargo float alongside Liseth, who whimpered but didn't protest. What are you doing? Shi'ara asked as Eli began tapping commands into the drone's control interface. Something stupid, Eli muttered. I'm setting it to autonomous defense mode. If anyone who's not us comes within 10 meters, it'll engage. You said you never tested the weapons. First time for everything. He pulled out a small remote control, something he'd built himself, cobbled together from spare parts, and synced it to the drone. The machine hummed to life, its optical sensors glowing a soft blue. Eli had spent hundreds of hours programming its AI core, teaching it to recognize threats, to distinguish civilians from hostiles, to protect rather than simply destroy. He hoped to hell he'd done it right. Stay close to me, Eli instructed. If shooting starts, get behind something solid and stay down. Shi'ara positioned herself next to her sister on the float, one small hand resting on Liseth's trembling shoulder. We are ready. Eli unlocked his shop door and peered into the corridor. Empty for the moment, but he could hear movement echoing from somewhere nearby. He activated the cargo float, and it rose smoothly, hovering a few inches off the ground. The drone's sensors swept the area, processing, calculating, ready. Let's go, Eli whispered. They moved into the corridor, Eli pushing the float ahead of him, while the drone followed at a programmed distance. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound made Eli's heart jump. They made it 3 corridors before everything went wrong. A door ahead of them opened, and a Jarakai stepped out, tall, armored, with the distinctive red markings of the Crimson Hand across his thorax. The assassin saw them immediately, and his secondary arms reached for the plasma carbine slung across his back. Eli didn't think. He pressed a button on his remote. The drone moved faster than Eli had ever seen any machine move. One moment it was hovering passively, the next it was between them and the assassin. Its own weapons, salvaged pulse cannons Eli had spent months calibrating, powering up with a whine that made Eli's teeth ache. The assassin fired. The plasma bolt hit the drone's shield, a piece of tech Eli had jerry-rigged from a crashed fighter's deflector array, and splashed harmlessly into light and heat. Then, the drone returned fire. The pulse hit the assassin's center mass, and he went down hard, his armor smoking, his limbs twitching. Not dead, Eli realized with a mix of relief and horror, but definitely out of the fight. Go, go, go! Eli shoved the float forward, and they ran. Behind them he heard clicking, lots of clicking, as other assassins responded to the sound of combat. The drone fell back, positioning itself as a rear guard, and Eli heard more weapons fire echo through the station. They turned a corner, then another. Eli navigating from memory, heading toward the sealed-off sections where the station's poorest humans had once lived. More assassins appeared, and the drone engaged them with mechanical precision, never wasting a shot, always protecting its charges first. But it was taking damage. Eli could see it on his remote's readout. Shields failing, armor compromised, one of the pulse cannons flickering. The drone wasn't military grade, not really. It was a miracle of improvisation and desperation, and it was dying to keep them alive. There, Eli pointed to a sealed bulkhead ahead, its surface marked with hazard warnings and condemnation notices. He pulled out his access codes, outdated now, but he'd helped seal this section, knew the override protocols, and started working the lock. The drone held the corridor behind them, firing in short, controlled bursts. 2 more assassins went down, then a third, but the fourth one had better aim, and his shot punched through the drone's left side, sending sparks and fluid spraying. The bulkhead opened with a groan of protest. Beyond it, the corridor was dark, lit only by emergency strips that cast everything in blood-red light. The air smelled stale, recycled too many times, but it was there. Inside, Eli grabbed the float and hauled it through the opening. Shiara followed, and Eli slapped the emergency close. The bulkhead started to shut, but the damaged drone was still outside, still fighting. Eli! Shiara's voice was sharp with alarm. Your machine. I know, Eli said, watching through the narrowing gap as his drone, his one valuable possession, his pride, his 5 years of work, held the line against enemies that would kill 2 children without hesitation. The last thing he saw before the bulkhead sealed was the drone turning, its damaged sensors finding him across the distance, and somehow Eli could have sworn the machine understood what he was asking it to do. The bulkhead sealed with a heavy clang. A moment later, Eli heard a massive explosion, felt it vibrate through the station's superstructure. His drone was gone, self-destructed probably, taking out as many assassins as it could in its final moments. Eli stood in the darkness, his hands shaking, trying to process what he'd just done. 5 years of work, his only possession of value, the one thing he could have sold to buy his way off this dying station. Gone. He'd given it away to save 2 alien children he'd known for less than 6 hours. Eli, Shiara said softly, your machine, you sacrificed it for us. He nodded, not trusting his voice. It was worth much, wasn't it? Enough to leave this place. Enough to start over. Yeah, Eli managed. Yeah, it was worth that much. Liseth made a small sound, and both Eli and Shiara turned to her. The younger girl was looking up at Eli with those huge compound eyes, and even in the dim red light, Eli could see something in her expression shift, a kind of wonder or maybe incomprehension. Why? Liseth whispered. We are strangers. We are Jarkai. Your people suffer under the Empire. Why would you give away everything for us? Eli knelt beside the float, meeting her eyes. Because you're kids, he said simply, and because I could help. That's all the reason I need. Shiara's antennae drooped in a gesture Eli had learned meant deep emotion. Our father, she said quietly, will want to know about this if we survive. He will want to know about the human who gave his last treasure to protect his daughters. Let's focus on the surviving part first, Eli said, standing and looking around the abandoned corridor. Come on, there's a safe room deeper in. We can rest there, and I can treat your sister properly. They moved through the dead human quarter, past abandoned homes and shops where families had once tried to make lives for themselves, at the edge of the galaxy. Eli saw graffiti on the walls, messages from people who'd lived here, loved here, died here. His own apartment had been 2 sections over, a tiny cube barely big enough for him and Sarah. He didn't go near it. Some memories were too heavy to carry while trying to stay alive. The safe room was exactly where Eli remembered it, a reinforced storage chamber that had been converted into an emergency shelter during the station's better days. He keyed in the override code, and the door opened to reveal a space about 20 feet square, equipped with basic life support, some emergency supplies, and enough room to breathe. Eli helped Liseth off the float and onto one of the bunks. The girl was feverish now, her exoskeleton hot to the touch. The makeshift bandage Eli had applied was soaked through with pale blue blood. "I need proper medical supplies," Eli said, examining the wound. "The station's clinic is too risky, but there's a black market doctor in Sector 7. If I can reach him—" "No," Shiara interrupted. "You cannot leave us. If the assassins find us while you are gone, if I don't get medicine, your sister dies. That's not a maybe, that's a certainty." Shiara's mandibles clicked in distress. She looked at Liseth, at Eli, at the sealed door that was all that stood between them and the hunters. "How long?" 3 hours, maybe 4. "I have to be careful, make sure I'm not followed." "That is too long. It's all we have." Eli pulled out what supplies he had: water, protein bars, a blanket that had seen better days. He showed Shiara how to use the comm panel, how to seal the door if she heard anything suspicious, how to activate the basic defense systems the room still had. "If I'm not back in 6 hours," Eli said, "assume something went wrong. There's an emergency beacon in that panel. It'll broadcast on all frequencies. Use it. Maybe you'll get lucky and someone besides the assassins will respond. And if we do not get lucky—" Eli didn't have a good answer for that. He just squeezed Shiara's shoulder, carefully mindful of her soft, juvenile exoskeleton, and headed for the door. "Eli," Shiara called after him. He turned. "Thank you. For everything. Liseth and I, we will remember. We swear it. Just stay alive," Eli said. "That's all the thanks I need." He left them there, 2 small figures in a dark room, and headed back into the station proper. The corridors were more crowded now as day cycle progressed, filled with the usual mix of traders, workers, criminals, and the desperate. Eli kept his head down, moving with the particular shuffle of someone who belonged nowhere and attracted no attention. Sector 7 was on the other side of the station, a 20-minute walk through increasingly sketchy territory. The black market doctor, a Turellian named Zextel, operated out of a converted cargo bay, treating anyone who could pay and asking no questions. Eli had used his services before, back when he'd been injured in a fight and couldn't afford to have it on his official record. The problem was, Eli had nothing to pay with. His credit account held barely enough for a week's food. His drone was gone. All he had was his skill with machines, and that wasn't going to buy the kind of medicine Liseth needed. He was 2 corridors from Zextel's clinic when he felt the blade against his throat. "Do not move, human," a voice hissed in his ear. "Do not speak. Do not breathe loud." Eli froze. The blade pressed harder, just short of breaking skin. He could feel the assassin behind him, could smell the distinctive scent of Jarkai combat pheromones. "You help the little ones," the assassin said. "Where are they?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Eli managed. The blade pressed hard enough to draw blood. "Your repair shop, your cargo float, your drone. We found the remains. Impressive machine for human work. Killed 3 of my brothers before it fell. Now tell me, where are Kael'thar's daughters?" Eli's mind raced. If he talked, the girls died. If he didn't talk, he died. And the girls died anyway when they ran out of supplies, or Liseth's wound killed her. There was no good choice, no clever solution. Just bad options and worse ones. "They're gone," Eli said. "Dead. The drone's self-destruct took them out along with your people. I helped them because they paid me. Credits are credits, right?" The assassin made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "You lie poorly, human. The blood trail leads away from the explosion. They live, and you will tell me where, or I will take you apart piece by piece until truth falls out." The blade lifted from Eli's throat, and rough hands spun him around. The assassin was female, Eli realized, with the silver markings of a senior operative. Her compound eyes studied him with cold calculation. "Last chance," she said. "Where?" The knife hit her from above, a long, thin blade that punched through the weak point where her head segment met her thorax. The assassin made a choking sound, staggered, and collapsed. Behind her stood a Jarkai male Eli had never seen before, old, his carapace scarred with decades of combat, wearing the simple clothes of a station worker. He pulled his knife free and cleaned it on the dead assassin's clothing with practiced efficiency. "You protect the daughters," the old warrior stated. It wasn't a question. Eli debated lying, but something in the old Jarkai's bearing made him think honesty might be the better bet. Yeah, I'm protecting them. Good. The warrior resheathed his knife. I am Vexkar, formerly of Kael'thar's household guard. I was thought dead in the initial attack. The Crimson Hand grows careless in their confidence. The daughters live? For now. One's injured. I need medicine. The black market doctor, yes, I have been watching you, human. Curious choice, risking your life for alien children. Most of your kind would have turned them over for the reward. There's a reward? 50,000 credits. Each. Eli's stomach lurched. 100,000 credits. More money than he'd see in 10 lifetimes. Enough to leave this station, start over, live comfortably. And he'd walked away from it without a second thought. I'm an idiot, Eli said numbly. Vexkar's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. You are a fool. There is a difference. Idiots act without thinking. Fools think, then choose the hard path anyway. Come, I will help you acquire medicine. Then you will take me to the daughters. Their father must know they live. You can contact Kael'thar. Not yet. The Crimson Hand controls communications, but the warlord's fleet returns in 3 days. When he discovers his daughters were hunted, there will be... The old warrior paused, searching for words. There will be consequences, the kind that end dynasties. They moved together through the corridors, an unlikely pair, human mechanic and Jarkai warrior, bound by the shared purpose of protecting 2 children from killers. Vexkar dealt with the black market doctor swiftly and efficiently, trading information and implied threats for the medical supplies Eli needed. On the way back to the safe room, Vexkar spoke quietly. The daughters must survive until their father returns. If they die, Kael'thar will tear this station apart, and thousands will perish in his rage. If they live, the old warrior glanced at Eli. He will want to meet the human who gave his last possession to save them. Warlords remember debts, human, for good or ill. I don't want anything from him, Eli said. That may be, but you will receive something regardless. Kael'thar does not leave debts unpaid. They reached the sealed section without incident, though Eli spotted at least 3 more Crimson Hand operatives, searching the corridors. The assassins were getting desperate, expanding their search pattern. Time was running out. Inside the safe room, Shi'ara had her sister cradled in her arms. Liseth looked worse, her breathing shallow, her exoskeleton dulled with approaching system failure. But when she saw Eli return with medicine, something like hope flickered in her eyes. Told you I'd come back, Eli said, kneeling beside them with the medical kit. This might hurt, kid, but it'll help, I promise. He administered the xenobiotics, cleaned and properly dressed the wound, set up an IV drip with fluids Xextal had provided. Modern medicine, real medicine. Not the improvised nonsense he'd been working with before. Liseth's color began to improve almost immediately. Vexkar watched from the doorway, his old warrior's eyes assessing everything. The assassins will find this place eventually, he said. We have perhaps 2 days, maybe less. And Kael'thar arrives in 3 days, Eli said. Yes. So we just have to survive 1 more day than they expect us to. Vexkar's mandibles clicked. You truly are a fool, human. I think I am beginning to like you. Shi'ara looked up at Eli with eyes that held too much understanding for one so young. You gave away your future for us, she said softly. Your drone, your one chance to escape. You gave it all away. Eli shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable. It was just a machine. No, Shi'ara said. It was everything. And you gave it freely, expecting nothing in return. This is not something I understand. This is not how the galaxy works. Maybe that's the problem, Eli replied. Maybe if more people did things expecting nothing in return, the galaxy wouldn't be such a terrible place. Outside, the station groaned and shuddered. Somewhere in the distance, Eli heard the sounds of violence, the Crimson Hand searching, killing, destroying in their hunt for 2 small children. But in this room, for this moment, they were safe. And sometimes, Eli thought, that was enough. Sometimes survival was its own victory. He just had to make that survival last 1 more day. The next 30 hours were the longest of Eli's life. He'd thought he understood fear, the fear of poverty, of violence, of slow death on a forgotten station at the edge of space. But this was different. This was the fear of watching children he'd chosen to protect slowly slip toward death while killers prowled the corridors outside, getting closer with every passing hour. Liseth improved, but slowly. The medicine helped, the proper wound care helped, but she'd lost too much blood and her young body was struggling to compensate. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes calling for her mother in a language so old and formal that even Vexakar seemed surprised she knew it. The high tongue, the old warrior explained during one of Liseth's episodes. Noble families teach it to their children from birth. It is the language of courts and ceremonies, not spoken in common places. The little one calls for her mother in the words of empresses and queens. "Will her mother come?" Eli asked. Vexkar's silence was answer enough. Lady Cetheril, the warlord's wife, was dead. She died buying her daughters time to escape, spending her life like currency to purchase their survival. The girls didn't know yet. Someone would have to tell them eventually, but not now. Not while they were still fighting just to live. Shi'ara never slept, or at least Eli never saw her sleep. The older sister kept constant vigil over Liseth, one small hand always touching her sister's arm, as if physical contact alone could keep death at bay. Eli understood the impulse. He'd done the same thing with Sarah back when she'd been dying, and he'd been helpless to stop it. "You should rest," Eli told Shi'ara during what passed for night cycle. "I'll watch your sister." "I cannot rest," Shi'ara replied, her voice flat with exhaustion. "If I close my eyes, I see Mother falling. I hear her last command, run and live. How can I rest when I might fail her?" "You haven't failed her, you're still alive. Liseth is still alive, that's what she wanted. Alive in a sealed room, hiding like prey animals, waiting for death or rescue, whichever finds us first. This is not what Mother wanted. She wanted us safe, she wanted us home." Eli sat down beside her, careful to maintain respectful distance. He'd learned Jarkai didn't like unexpected touch, valued their personal space in ways humans sometimes didn't understand. "Home is where you make it," he said. "When I lost everything, I had to learn that. It's not about the place. It's about being with people who care whether you live or die. And who cares whether we live or die? You, a human stranger. Vexkar, who thought us dead until today. The galaxy sees us as chess pieces in a game between powers. Our value is in who our father is, not who we are." There was too much bitter wisdom in those words for someone so young. Eli thought about arguing, about offering empty comfort, but Shi'ara deserved better than lies. "You're right," he said. "That's exactly how the galaxy sees you. But that's not how I see you. I see two kids who got dealt a terrible hand and are fighting like hell to survive it. That's worth caring about. That's worth protecting." Shi'ara turned her compound eyes on him, studying his face with an intensity that made Eli uncomfortable. "You truly mean that. I can hear it in your voice. The sincerity. My tutors taught me to listen for lies, to hear the spaces between words where truth hides. You have no lies in you, human. You are strange. Eli. My name is Eli." "Eli," she repeated, the name awkward in her mandible-clicked accent. "Why did you never leave this place? Vexkar told me you have skills worth much more than you earn here. You could have found better work, better life. Why stay in this dying place?" Eli was quiet for a long moment, watching Liseth's shallow breathing, listening to the station groan around them. "Because leaving means trying again," he said finally, "means hoping again, and hope is the most dangerous thing in the universe. It makes you vulnerable. It gives you something to lose. But you helped us. You gave away your drone. That was hope. That was making yourself vulnerable." "Yeah, I guess it was." Eli rubbed his face, feeling the exhaustion in his bones. "Maybe I'm tired of being numb. Maybe watching two kids fight for their lives reminded me that some things are worth the risk. Father will want to reward you," Shi'ara said. "When he comes, if we survive, he will offer you wealth, position, status. Will you accept?" "I haven't thought about it." "You should think about it. Refusing a warlord's gratitude can be as dangerous as earning his anger." Eli almost laughed. "Kid, I gave up my only valuable possession to hide you from assassins. I'm pretty sure I stopped making safe choices about 40 hours ago." The comm panel crackled, and Vexkar's voice came through from his position near the sealed bulkhead. "Movement in the outer corridors. 3 hostiles, search pattern, moving closer. They will reach this section within the hour." Eli stood, moving to the room's small armory, if the collection of improvised weapons could be called that. He'd fashioned a few plasma cutters into crude weapons, not much, but better than nothing. Vexkar had his knives and decades of experience. It would have to be enough. "Shi'ara," Eli said quietly, "if they breach this room, I want you to take Liseth through the maintenance shaft in the back wall. It leads to the station's central core. You'll have to climb, and it won't be easy with your sister, but we will not leave you to die alone. You will if I tell you to. Your job is to survive, not to be noble. Understand?" Shi'ara's antennae flattened against her head, anger Eli had learned. Our mother died so we could live. How many more deaths must we carry? How many more sacrifices? As many as it takes, Eli said flatly. That's how survival works. It's not fair. It's not noble. It just is. He moved to join Vexakar at the door, leaving Shiara to process that harsh truth. The old warrior stood perfectly still, his head tilted as he listened to sounds only his Jarkai hearing could detect. They are systematic, Vexakar murmured. Opening every sealed door, checking every abandoned space. We have perhaps 20 minutes before they reach us. Can we hold them? 2 warriors against 3 assassins, fighting from a defensive position? Perhaps. But if there are more behind them, if reinforcements come, he clicked his mandibles. We will die well. That is the best we can hope for. I don't want to die well, Eli said. I want to live poorly, badly, in whatever half-assed way gets us through this. Vexakar's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. You remind me of Kael'thar in some ways. He too refuses to accept the obvious answer when it displeases him. Perhaps that is why he has lived so long, won so many battles. Reality bends around the stubborn, or reality kills them. That happens a lot too. Yes, that happens very often. They waited in tense silence as the sounds grew closer. Eli could hear it now, the distinctive hiss of a plasma cutter working through a sealed door, the click of Jarkai communication, the methodical efficiency of trained killers doing their work. 15 minutes. 10. 5. Then, the noises stopped. Eli and Vexakar exchanged glances. That was wrong. Assassins didn't just stop in the middle of a search pattern. They didn't abandon thoroughness for no reason. They know we are here, Vexakar whispered. They have stopped because they are bringing more forces. They will breach all at once, overwhelming our defense. How long? Minutes, not many. Eli looked back at the girls. Liseth was still unconscious, her breathing labored. Shiara stared at them with eyes that held no illusions about what was coming. They were out of time, out of options, out of miracles. The entire station shuddered violently, and alarms began blaring throughout the structure. Eli grabbed a wall to steady himself, and through the floor he felt more impacts, heavy, rhythmic, massive. What the hell? Eli started. Vexakar's antennae shot straight up, his entire posture shifting to something like shock. Ships. Warships. Something is attacking the station. More impacts. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency reds. The comm system came alive with panicked voices in a dozen languages, all saying variations of the same thing. They were under attack. Eli pulled up his datapad, hacking into the station's external sensors. What he saw made his stomach drop. 3 cruisers in Jarkai military configuration, their weapons batteries live, systematically targeting the station's docking bays and communication arrays. They weren't trying to destroy Threshold 9. Not yet. They were isolating it, preventing anyone from leaving or calling for help. That's Imperial Navy, Eli said. Why would the Empire attack its own station? That is not the Imperial Navy, Vexakar said, his voice strange. Look at the hull markings. The personal sigil on the flagship. Eli zoomed in. The lead cruiser bore a massive symbol across its bow, a crowned skull gripping a sword, rendered in silver and red. Even Eli, who knew little of Imperial heraldry, recognized that symbol. Everyone in this sector recognized it. Kael'thar, Vexakar whispered. The warlord has come, 3 days early. The implications hit Eli like a physical blow. Kael'thar had somehow learned his daughters were in danger. He'd raced back ahead of schedule and was now systematically locking down the station, hunting for his children, or for whoever had taken them. We need to signal him, Eli said. Let him know they're safe. No. Vexakar grabbed Eli's arm. Not yet. If the Crimson Hand knows Kael'thar is here, they will kill the daughters immediately. Dead hostages serve a purpose. They inflict maximum pain. We must wait until his forces secure the station. How long will that take? Hours. Perhaps less if he is willing to accept civilian casualties. The station shook again, and this time Eli heard the distinctive sound of boarding actions, breaching charges, weapons fire, the screams of people caught in a military operation they didn't understand. Kael'thar was coming, and he was coming through anyone and anything in his way. The assassins, Eli said suddenly. They'll know what this attack means. They'll come for the girls now, right now, before Kael'thar can secure them. Yes, Vexakar agreed grimly. The next few minutes will determine everything. As if summoned by their words, the sealed bulkhead groaned. Something was cutting through it. Multiple somethings, plasma torches working in concert, peeling away the heavy metal like foil. Eli raised his improvised weapon, and Vexkar slid into a combat stance that spoke of decades of experience. Shi'ara lifted her head, understanding in her young eyes. It comes down to this, then. A human mechanic and an old warrior against the Crimson Hand, with children as the prize. That's about the size of it, Eli agreed. We will not forget, Shi'ara said. If we live, if we die, we will not forget what you gave for us. The bulkhead exploded inward in a shower of sparks and molten metal. 4 assassins poured through the breach, weapons raised, moving with lethal precision. Eli fired his plasma cutter, the improvised weapon spitting bolts that went wide, missing everything. He was a mechanic, not a soldier, and fear made his hands shake. Vexkar had no such problems. The old warrior moved like liquid death, his knives finding throats and weak points with surgical accuracy. 1 assassin fell, then another, but the remaining 2 opened fire and Vexkar went down, his leg shattered by a plasma bolt. Eli threw himself in front of the girls, spreading his arms as if his soft human body could stop bullets and blades. It was stupid. It was futile. It was all he had left to give. The lead assassin, the one with gold markings that indicated command rank, leveled her weapon at Eli's chest. Move aside, human. This is not your fight. Step away, and you may yet live. No, Eli said simply. You would die for alien children? For the spawn of the Butcher of Six, the conqueror who has killed thousands of your kind? They're just kids. That's all they are. That's all they need to be. The assassin's mandibles clicked in disgust. Humans. So sentimental, so foolishly compassionate. This is why your species will never matter. You care too much for things that do not deserve care. She pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt hit Eli in the shoulder, spinning him around, dropping him to his knees. Pain exploded through his body, white-hot agony that made thought impossible. He heard Shi'ara scream, heard Liseth cry out weakly, heard Vexkar cursing in his ancient warrior's tongue. The assassin stepped over Eli's fallen body, weapon now aimed at the children. The Crimson Hand does not fail. Tell your father, little ones, that his enemies are long of memory and patient in... The wall exploded. Not the door, not the bulkhead. The actual wall, 3 feet of reinforced station hull, blown inward by breaching charges so powerful they shook the entire section. Through the smoke and debris came Jarkai warriors in full combat armor, weapons raised, moving with military precision. The lead warrior was massive, 7 feet tall, his armor decorated with honor marks and kill tallies. His compound eyes swept the room, processing everything in an instant. The dead assassins, the wounded Vexkar, the human bleeding on the floor, and most importantly, the 2 small figures huddled against the far wall. Shi'ara, the warrior said, his voice deep enough to vibrate through the floor. Liseth, father, Shi'ara whispered. Kael'thar, warlord of the 3rd Fleet, butcher of 6, conqueror of 100 worlds, crossed the room in 3 strides and gathered his daughters in his massive arms. The gesture was so tender, so at odds with his fearsome reputation, that Eli would have laughed if he wasn't busy dying. The remaining assassin tried to run. She made it 2 steps before Kael'thar's guards cut her down. The warlord didn't even glance at her body, his full attention on his children. You are hurt, he said to Liseth, his voice cracking slightly. You are both hurt. We live, father, Shi'ara said. We live because of them. She pointed at Vexkar, then at Eli. The human. He gave everything. His machine, his safety, his blood. He gave it all for strangers. Kael'thar's gaze shifted to Eli, who was trying very hard not to pass out from blood loss and pain. The warlord's expression was unreadable behind his armored faceplate, but something in the way he moved suggested he was re-evaluating everything he thought he knew about the universe. Human, Kael'thar said. What is your name? Eli, he managed through gritted teeth. Eli Grant. Eli Grant, you have saved my daughters when the entire Crimson Hand and half the station could not. You have given treasure and blood for children not of your kind, expecting no reward. You have... The warlord paused, searching for words. You have done something I did not think possible. You have surprised me. Great, Eli muttered. Can I pass out now? No, Kael'thar said with a hint of what might have been humor. Not yet. You will live, human. My daughters insist on it, and I have learned never to disappoint them when it matters. The warlord gestured, and medics swarmed forward, tending to Eli's wound, to Vexkar's shattered leg, to Liseth's injuries. Through the haze of pain and shock, Eli heard Shi'ara talking rapidly in her clicking language, explaining everything, The hiding, the drone, the sacrifice, the vigil. Kael'thar listened without interruption, and with each word, his posture shifted subtly. "You gave your last possession," Kael'thar said finally, looking down at Eli. "A combat drone, my daughter tells me. Custom built. Worth enough to buy your freedom from this place. Just a machine," Eli said weakly. "No, not just a machine. It was hope, future, escape. You gave away your hope to protect my children. Seemed like the right thing to do." Kael'thar was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached up and removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face that had seen 1,000 battles, compound eyes that held the weight of uncounted deaths. "The right thing," he repeated softly. "Such a human concept. Simple, foolish, pure." He knelt beside Eli, bringing his massive armored form down to eye level. "I am in your debt, Eli Grant. The life debt, the blood debt, the debt that cannot be paid with credits or status or empty words. Do you understand what this means?" Eli's vision was getting fuzzy around the edges. "Not really. I'm not big on Jarkai customs." "It means," Kael'thar said, "that you have bound yourself to my house. It means you are mine to protect, as you protected mine. It means that anyone who harms you harms me, and I take such harm very personally." The warlord stood, turning to his warriors. "This human is under my personal protection. Let it be known throughout the fleet, throughout the empire, throughout the galaxy. Eli Grant is untouchable. His enemies are my enemies. His needs are my needs. This is my word, and I never break my word." Shi'ara moved to Eli's side, her small hand finding his uninjured one. "Thank you," she said simply, "for letting us live, for caring when no one else did." "You're welcome, kid," Eli managed, before the darkness finally claimed him. His last thought, before unconsciousness took him, was that he'd started the day as a forgotten mechanic on a dying station and was ending it under the protection of one of the galaxy's most feared warlords. Life, he reflected, was getting complicated. But at least the kids were safe. In the end, that was all that mattered. Eli woke to sterile white walls and the soft hum of medical equipment. For a disorienting moment, he thought he was back in the colony before the raid, back when he'd had a life that made sense. Then pain flared through his shoulder, and memory crashed back with the subtlety of a cargo hauler. Assassins, children, a warlord who'd declared him under personal protection. "Easy," a voice said. Human voice, speaking English with a medical professional's calm. "You took a plasma bolt to the shoulder. The Jarkai medics did good work, but you need to stay still while the regeneration gel does its job." Eli turned his head carefully and found a human woman in a white coat standing beside his bed. She was maybe 50, with grey-streaked hair and the kind of competent air that came from decades of practice. Behind her, standing at attention near the door, was a Jarkai warrior in full armor. "Where am I?" Eli asked, his throat dry. "Kael'thar's flagship, the Crimson Talon. You've been unconscious for 16 hours. The doctor handed him a cup of water. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen." "Yes, human doctor. The warlord employs several of us for situations exactly like this. Drink slowly." The water was cool and tasted better than anything Eli had ever consumed. "The girls, Shi'ara and Liseth, both recovering. Liseth is still weak from blood loss, but she'll make a full recovery. Shi'ara hasn't left her sister's side except to check on you 3 times. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. "That child has a will like tempered steel. She's going to be formidable when she grows up." "And the station? Threshold 9? The doctor's expression darkened. "Secured. The Crimson Hand assassins have been dealt with. Kael'thar's forces are currently interrogating everyone who had any knowledge of the plot. It's not pretty. The warlord is not known for gentleness with those who threaten his family." Eli processed that. Interrogations. Purges. The kind of brutal efficiency that had earned Kael'thar his reputation. How many died? In the assault, 47, mostly Crimson Hand operatives and their local collaborators. Kael'thar tried to minimize civilian casualties, but when you breach a station with military force, she shrugged. It could have been much worse. Could have been, but wasn't. 47 people dead because Eli had chosen to hide 2 children instead of turning them over. He tried to feel guilty about that, tried to summon remorse, but all he felt was a numb sort of satisfaction that the girls were alive. "The warlord wants to see you," Dr. Chen said. "When you're ready." "He's been insistent, but I told him you need at least another day of recovery before—" "I'll see him now," Eli interrupted. "Mr. Grant, I really don't recommend—" "Now," Eli repeated. "If Kael'thar wants to talk, I'd rather get it over with." Dr. Chen sighed but nodded. "Your funeral. Or maybe your coronation. With Kael'thar, it's often hard to tell which you're walking into. She turned to the guard. Inform the warlord that the human is awake and requesting an audience. The guard clicked an acknowledgement and left. Dr. Chen helped Eli sit up, adjusting the medical supports and checking his vital signs with practiced efficiency. Whatever you did to earn the warlord's favor, she said quietly, it's unprecedented. I've been with his fleet for 7 years and I've never seen him extend personal protection to anyone outside his immediate family and oath-sworn warriors. I didn't do anything special, just helped some kids. Those kids are his entire world. Lady Sitharil, their mother, died buying them time to escape. Kael'thar loved her in a way that's rare among Jarkai nobility. Power marriages are common, but theirs was different, genuine. When he discovered she was dead and his daughters were being hunted, Dr. Chen shook her head. Let's just say the Crimson Hand is going to regret ever hearing the name Kael'thar. The door opened, and the warlord entered. Without his armor, he was somehow more imposing. 8 feet of scarred chitin and coiled muscle, his compound eyes reflecting Eli's image 1,000 times over. He wore simple robes marked with his house sigil, and he moved with the fluid grace of a born warrior. Behind him came Vexkar, walking with a slight limp but otherwise recovered, and to Eli's surprise, Shi'ara. The girl looked better, rested, cleaned, her juvenile exoskeleton no longer showing stress patterns. Leave us, Kael'thar said to Dr. Chen. The doctor bowed and departed without argument. Even the guard withdrew, closing the door behind him. Now it was just Eli, the warlord, the old warrior, and the child. Kael'thar studied Eli in silence for a long moment. Eli met his gaze as steadily as he could, refusing to look away first. He'd learned long ago that showing fear to predators only invited attack. You do not fear me, Kael'thar observed. Would it help if I did? No. The warlord's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. But most humans cannot help themselves. They see my face and remember the battles, the conquests, the reputation. They expect me to kill them for sport. Are you going to? No. I am going to thank you. And then I am going to make you an offer. Shi'ara moved to stand beside her father, her small hand finding his much larger one. The gesture was unconsciously trusting, and Eli saw something in Kael'thar's expression soften at the contact. My daughter has told me everything, the warlord continued. Your shop, your drone, your courage, your sacrifice. She speaks of you with a respect I have rarely heard her give to anyone, including seasoned warriors twice her age. She's a good kid. Both of them are. They are precious beyond measure. Kael'thar's voice carried depths of emotion that seemed at odds with his fearsome appearance. Lysith is my youngest. Shi'ara is my heir. They are all that remains of my beloved Sitharil, who gave her life so they might live. Do you understand what you saved, Eli Grant? You saved my future, my legacy, my reason for drawing breath. Eli didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Kael'thar continued. The life debt I spoke of before you lost consciousness, it is binding under Jarkai law. You protected mine, therefore you are mine to protect. But beyond law, beyond custom, I owe you something that cannot be measured in credits or status. I don't want payment, Eli said. I helped because they needed help. That's all. I know. That is precisely why you must be rewarded. Kael'thar moved closer, his presence filling the room. Humans confuse me. Your species makes decisions based on emotion, on sentiment, on concepts like the right thing that have no tactical value. It is inefficient, illogical, and yet, he gestured to Shi'ara, it saved my daughter's life. Your illogical compassion accomplished what my warriors, my wealth, my power could not. You gave away your future for strangers, expecting nothing in return. This is not something I can understand, but it is something I must honor. What do you want from me? Eli asked, sensing they were getting to the heart of this conversation. Kael'thar clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. I want to offer you a choice. First option, I can give you enough wealth to live comfortably for the rest of your life. A colony world of your choosing, a home security peace. You can disappear into a quiet existence and never think of Threshold 9 or my daughters again. And the second option? Join my household. Become an honored member of my fleet. You have skills, engineering, machine work, survival instincts that kept my daughters alive against impossible odds. I can use those skills. More than that, I can use your perspective. Humans see the universe differently than Jarkai. Perhaps that difference is valuable. Eli blinked. You're offering me a job. I am offering you a place, a purpose, a chance to matter in ways that working on Threshold 9 never allowed. Kael'thar paused. But I will not pretend it is an easy choice. Joining my household means joining my wars. The enemies who sent the Crimson Hand will send others. The Imperial Court fears my power, and they will do everything possible to diminish it. You would be walking into a life of danger and uncertainty, as opposed to the safe, comfortable life I had as a mechanic on a dying station. Vexkar's mandibles clicked in amusement. The human has a point, my lord. Shi'ara spoke for the first time. I want him to stay. Her voice was quiet but firm. Father, he is different from the others. He does not see us as weapons or symbols or political assets. He sees us as children. I want him to stay. Kael'thar looked down at his daughter, and Eli saw genuine tenderness in that gaze. You would trust him? A human? Despite everything our people have taught you about their weakness, their sentimentality, I would trust him with my life, Shi'ara said simply. I already have. The warlord turned back to Eli. There it is. My daughter's endorsement carries more weight than you might imagine. She is a good judge of character, better than I am, truthfully. If she believes you should stay, then perhaps you should. Eli thought about it. He thought about the quiet life, the peaceful colony, the chance to finally rest after years of struggle. It sounded nice, safe, empty. Then he thought about Shi'ara's fierce protectiveness of her sister, Liseth's quiet courage despite her pain, the way they'd trusted him when they had every reason not to, the feeling of mattering, of being needed, of having a purpose beyond simple survival. I'll stay, Eli said. Not for the adventure or the danger or whatever glory comes with serving a warlord. I'll stay because those kids deserve someone who gives a damn about them as people, not as political assets. If you're offering me a chance to keep doing that, then yeah, I'm in. Kael'thar was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed his head. A shallow bow, but from a warlord to anyone it was significant. Then it is settled. Eli Grant, I name you House Guardian to my daughters. You will be responsible for their safety, their education in matters of the wider galaxy, and their well-being. You will have access to resources, support, and my personal authority in all matters concerning them. I'm not a soldier, Eli protested. I'm a mechanic. I don't know how to... You kept my daughters alive with improvised weapons and a salvaged drone. You outmaneuvered professional assassins with nothing but determination and compassion. I think you will manage. Kael'thar's mandibles clicked. Besides, I have warriors enough. What my daughters need is someone who sees them as children first and princesses second. That role, human, is yours. Vexkar stepped forward. I will assist, of course. The human has courage, but lacks training. I can remedy that deficiency. Can you teach an old mechanic new tricks? Eli asked. I taught young nobles to survive battlefields. You are less stubborn than they were. It should be manageable. Shi'ara moved to Eli's bedside, her young face serious. This means you are part of our house now, part of our family. Do you understand what that means? Not really, Eli admitted. It means we protect each other, always, no matter the cost. She held out her small hand in a gesture that mixed human and Jarkai customs. Do you accept this bond? Eli looked at that outstretched hand, at the child who'd survived assassination, loss, and terror, who still had the courage to offer trust to a stranger. He thought about Sarah, about all the ways he'd failed to protect her, about the chance to maybe do better this time. He took Shi'ara's hand gently. I accept. Kael'thar watched this exchange with an expression Eli couldn't quite read. Good, the warlord said finally. Then let us begin. You have much to learn about Jarkai customs, politics, and the complexities of imperial life. Your education starts immediately. Can it start after I've had more than 16 hours of recovery from being shot? No. The galaxy does not wait for the wounded to heal. You will learn this lesson quickly, or you will not survive long in my service. But there was something almost gentle in Kael'thar's tone, a suggestion that perhaps he was joking. Perhaps. Dr. Chen was summoned back to supervise Eli's continued treatment, while Kael'thar began what would become a recurring feature of Eli's new life, long discussions about imperial politics, house dynamics, and the complexities of raising children in a culture that valued strength above all else. My daughters have been sheltered, Kael'thar explained as Eli received another round of medications. Sitharil believed they should have a childhood before duty consumed them. I agreed, though many in the Empire saw it as weakness. Now Sitharil is gone, and my daughters must grow up faster than I wished. They need guidance, they need protection, they need someone who will not simply mold them into weapons. And you think I can provide that? I think you already have. Shi'ara speaks differently now, more confident, less afraid. You gave her something precious, the knowledge that kindness exists, even in a cruel galaxy. That is worth more than any martial training. Over the next several hours, Eli learned more about the Jarkai Empire than he'd ever wanted to know. The political factions, the power struggles, the Byzantine rules of succession and status. Kael'thar commanded the Third Fleet, one of the Empire's most powerful military forces, which made him simultaneously invaluable and threatening to the imperial court. The Empress tolerates me because she needs my warriors, Kael'thar explained, but she fears me because those same warriors answer to me first and her second. The Crimson Hand assassination attempt was likely sanctioned by someone close to her throne, a warning that my power has grown too great. By killing your children? Eli asked, horrified. By making me suffer. Dead children are tragic. Murdered children are a message. Even the mighty can be hurt in their soft places. If the assassination had succeeded, I would have been weakened emotionally, politically compromised, vulnerable. That's monstrous. That is politics. Kael'thar's voice was flat. Welcome to Imperial life, Eli Grant. It only gets worse from here. As if to prove the point, an aide entered and whispered urgently to the warlord in their clicking language. Kael'thar's entire posture shifted, becoming rigid with controlled anger. What is it? Eli asked. The Imperial Court has summoned me to explain my assault on Threshold 9. They claim I overstepped my authority by launching military action in Imperial space without proper authorization. Kael'thar's mandibles clicked with barely suppressed rage. They protect the assassins who tried to murder my children, and they dare to summon me like a disobedient soldier. Will you go? I must. To refuse is to invite open conflict, and I am not yet ready for civil war. He turned to Vexkar. The fleet remains here. Guard the daughters. Guard the human. If anything happens to them while I am gone, the Empire will burn. Understood, my lord, Vexkar replied. Kael'thar moved to the door, then paused and looked back at Eli. You asked me earlier what I want from you. Here is the truth. I want you to teach my daughters that the galaxy is not only blood and conquest. I want them to understand that compassion is not weakness, that kindness has value, that being powerful does not mean being cruel. These are lessons I cannot teach them, because I am too much a product of our culture. But you, human, you are different. I'm just a mechanic. No, you are the man who gave away his future to protect strangers. That makes you something rare and precious. Do not waste it. With that, the warlord departed, leaving Eli alone with his thoughts, his healing wounds, and the strange realization that his life had just become impossibly complicated. Dr. Chen returned after Kael'thar left. So, she said conversationally, how does it feel to be a house guardian? Terrifying, surreal, like I'm waiting for someone to realize they made a mistake and space me. You'll get used to it. Or you won't and you'll die. Either way, it'll be an interesting ride. She smiled at his expression. Sorry, 7 years with the fleet has left me with a dark sense of humor. But seriously, Eli, what you did was extraordinary. These people respect strength, but they revere sacrifice. You gave everything for children you'd just met. That story is going to spread throughout the fleet, probably throughout the Empire. You're going to be famous, whether you want to be or not. I really don't want to be. Tough, you made a choice, and now you get to live with the consequences. But between you and me, she leaned in conspiratorially. I'm glad you're here. The girls need someone like you, someone human, someone who remembers that power should serve compassion, not the other way around. That night, Shiara visited Eli in his medical bay. She brought Liseth with her, the younger girl still weak but mobile now, her wound properly healed by advanced Jarkai medicine. We wanted to thank you properly, Shiara said. In our culture, there is a ceremony for life debts, words that must be spoken, bonds that must be acknowledged. You don't need to. We do. Please, Eli, let us do this. So Eli listened as the two girls spoke in their formal high tongue, words that Vexkar later translated as an oath of eternal gratitude, a promise that they would never forget, never forsake, never abandon the one who had saved them. It was beautiful and solemn and made Eli deeply uncomfortable because he still didn't feel like he'd done anything worthy of such ceremony. He'd just helped some kids. But to them, to Kael'thar, to the entire Third Fleet, he'd apparently done something miraculous. He'd proven that humans, dismissed as weak, sentimental, irrelevant, could possess a kind of strength that the mighty Jarkai Empire had forgotten existed. As Eli finally drifted back to sleep that night, his last waking thought was that he'd spent 5 years trying to disappear, trying to become invisible, trying to matter to no one. Now, against all intention, he mattered very much to some very powerful people. He just hoped he could live up to their expectations, and maybe, just maybe, teach them something about the value of compassion in a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to be kind. 3 weeks aboard the Crimson Talon taught Eli that his old life on Threshold 9, for all its hardships, had been blissfully simple. Here, every interaction carried weight, every conversation held hidden meanings, and every decision rippled through a web of politics he barely understood. He was housed in quarters adjacent to the daughter's chambers, a suite that was larger than his entire shop had been, with actual furniture, working climate control, and a viewport that showed the stars in their raw, unfiltered glory. It was luxury beyond anything he'd experienced in years, and it made him deeply uncomfortable. "You must learn to accept these things," Vexkar told him during their morning training session. The old warrior had taken it upon himself to educate Eli in basic combat, politics, and survival aboard a Jarkai warship. "You represent the warlord's house now. To appear weak or poor reflects badly on him." Eli blocked a practice strike, slowly, clumsily, but better than he had 3 days ago. "I'm a mechanic, not a nobleman. You are whatever Lord Kael'thar says you are. That is how power works." Vexkar swept Eli's legs out from under him, and Eli hit the training mat hard. "Again, and this time watch my lower arms. Jarkai have 4 limbs to strike with. Focusing on only 2 is how humans die." They trained for 2 hours every morning, enough time for Eli to learn he was spectacularly bad at combat, but not so hopeless that Vexkar gave up in disgust. The old warrior had patience worn into him by decades of training young nobles, and he seemed to view Eli as an interesting challenge. "You think too much," Vexkar observed as they finished. "Combat is not a mathematical equation. It is instinct, reaction, flow. Your mind gets in the way. My mind is all I've got. I'm not built for this." "No, but you are built for survival. You survived Threshold 9 for 5 years with no support, no status, no protection. That speaks to instincts you have not yet learned to trust." Vexkar handed Eli a water container. "The warlord chose well. You are not a warrior, but you are a survivor. That may be more valuable." After training came his actual duties, overseeing the daughter's education, ensuring their safety, and most challengingly, helping them process the trauma of their mother's death and the assassination attempt. Shi'ara handled grief like she handled everything else, with fierce determination to appear strong. She threw herself into her studies, practicing combat forms with Vexkar, learning fleet operations from the ship's officers, absorbing everything about the Empire that would one day be hers to navigate. She rarely spoke of her mother, and when she did, her voice remained carefully controlled. Lyseth was different. The younger girl was quieter, more withdrawn, prone to nightmares that left her shaking and calling for a mother who would never answer. Eli found himself sitting with her on those nights, not saying much, just being present. Sometimes he told her stories about Earth, a planet she'd never seen, a culture foreign to her own. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching the stars through the viewport. "Do you miss your daughter?" Lyseth asked one night, her voice small in the darkness. Eli was quiet for a long moment. "Every day. Does it get easier? The missing? No. You just get better at carrying it." "I do not want to get better at carrying it. I want Mother back." "I know, kid. I know." Lyseth leaned against him, a gesture of trust that still surprised Eli, given how Jarkai usually guarded their personal space. "Shi'ara says I must be strong. That mourning is for the weak, but I do not feel strong. I feel broken. Shi'ara is scared too. She just shows it differently." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen that kind of strength before. It's not real strength, it's armor. She's protecting herself the only way she knows how." Eli put his arm carefully around Lyseth's small shoulders. "There's no shame in grieving. Your mother loved you enough to die for you. That deserves tears. Father does not cry. Jarkai warriors do not cry. Maybe that's the problem." Lyseth considered this with the seriousness children brought to things adults had long stopped questioning. "You are very strange, Eli. Father chose well." During the days, Eli worked in the ship's engineering sections, partly because he needed something to do with his hands, partly because the fleet's chief engineer, a gruff Jarkai named Torval, had heard about the combat drone and wanted to pick Eli's brain about human engineering approaches. "So your species builds things differently," Torval said, examining Eli's technical schematics on a datapad. "Less elegant, more improvisational, but effective. This drone should not have worked. Yet your daughter claims it killed 3 trained assassins. Shiara's not my daughter, Eli corrected automatically. She speaks of you as if you were her father. In our culture, that is what matters, not blood, but bond. Torval clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. This modification here to the power distribution system, highly inefficient by our standards, but it allows for rapid reallocation of energy to weapons or shields. Clever. I was working with salvage, had to make do with what I could find. Necessity breeds innovation. Perhaps we have grown too comfortable with standardization, too confident in our superiority. Torval looked up from the schematic. I would like to commission several combat drones using your hybrid approach. The warlord agrees. Machines that can think flexibly, adapt quickly, might serve us better than our current standardized models. You want me to build war machines? I want you to do what you do best. Create something from nothing. Whether those somethings become war machines depends on the galaxy's need for them. It was work that mattered, work that challenged him, work that didn't feel like slow death by mediocrity. Eli found himself actually looking forward to his time in engineering, losing himself in the familiar comfort of machines and mathematics. But his primary responsibility remained the daughters, and that meant navigating the complex social dynamics of a Jarkai warship, where humans were rare and mostly dismissed as inferior. The nobles aboard the Crimson Talon, officers from powerful families serving under Kael'thar, viewed Eli with barely concealed contempt. To them he was an oddity, a pet the warlord had inexplicably elevated beyond his station. They spoke around him in their formal high tongue, making jokes they assumed he couldn't understand. Eli understood every word. He just chose not to react. The human guardian, one noble sneered during a formal dinner Eli had been required to attend. Tell me, does Lord Kael'thar keep you for wisdom, or merely as a curiosity? Eli met the noble's compound eyes calmly. I couldn't say. You'd have to ask him. I am asking you, human. What value do you bring to this house beyond sentiment? Before Eli could answer, Shiara's voice cut across the dining hall. He brings the value of having saved my life and my sister's when all of your vaunted warriors failed to protect us. Perhaps you should consider that before questioning his worth. The noble's antennae flattened in embarrassment. Shiara, despite her youth, held status that even senior officers had to acknowledge. Dismissing her defense of Eli would be insulting her directly, and no one wanted to insult the warlord's heir. My apologies, young mistress, the noble said stiffly. I meant no offense. Then choose your words with greater care in the future. Shiara returned to her meal, the matter closed. Later in private, Eli spoke with her. You don't have to defend me. I can handle a few insults. You should not have to handle them at all. Shiara's mandibles clicked in frustration. They see you as weak because you are kind. They mistake compassion for cowardice. It infuriates me. It's their problem, not mine. I know what I am. And what are you, Eli? He thought about it. Someone trying to do right by 2 kids who deserve better than this galaxy usually gives them. That's enough for me. Shiara studied him with those 2 old eyes. You really do not care about status or power, do you? This is not false humility or political maneuvering. You genuinely do not value the things my people kill for. I've had power, kind of. Had status briefly back before everything went wrong. Didn't make me happy. Didn't save the people I loved. Eli shrugged. What I care about now is simpler. Making sure you and your sister are safe, healthy, and as happy as kids can be in a universe that keeps trying to hurt them. That is not simple at all. That is perhaps the most complicated thing you could choose to care about. Yeah, well, nobody said I was smart. Shiara's mandibles clicked in what Eli had learned was her version of laughter, rare and precious. Father returns tomorrow. The Imperial Court has finished its interrogation. How did it go? Officially, Lord Kael'thar has been reprimanded for overstepping his authority and fined a symbolic amount for damages to Imperial property. Unofficially? Shiara's expression darkened. The Crimson Hand operatives who survived his assault have all died in custody. Mysterious accidents, sudden illnesses, convenient executions for unrelated crimes. The conspiracy is being buried. They're covering it up. The Imperial Court cannot admit that assassins operated freely on an Imperial station. It would expose their weakness, their internal divisions. Better to pretend it never happened. Shiara's voice carried a bitterness beyond her years. This is how power protects itself, not through justice, but through silence. Eli felt anger rising in his chest, anger at a system that would let children's would-be murderers go unpunished, that valued political convenience over accountability. That's not right. No. but it is reality. Welcome to imperial politics, Eli. Justice is for the powerless. The powerful have arrangements. The next day, Kael'thar returned to the Crimson Talon. Eli was summoned to his quarters, along with Vex-Kar and, surprisingly, the daughters. The warlord looked exhausted, a deep weariness that went beyond physical fatigue into something spiritual. The Empire, Kael'thar said without preamble, is rotting from within. The Empress grows old and paranoid. Her court is a nest of vipers, each one plotting against the others while the realm slowly fractures. The Crimson Hand was just one symptom of a larger disease. What did they want? Eli asked. The court, I mean. Besides punishing you for protecting your children, they wanted assurances that I remain loyal, that my fleet serves the Empire first and my family second. They wanted me diminished, reminded of my place. Kael'thar's mandibles clicked sharply. They wanted me afraid. Are you? Shiara asked quietly. Her father looked at her and something in his expression softened. I fear for you and your sister. I fear what will happen to you in a galaxy that sees you as weapons or symbols rather than people. Everything else, the court, the conspiracies, the political games, those I can handle, those I have always handled. He turned to Eli. Which brings me to you, human. The court has heard rumors about my human guardian. They find it amusing. A warlord keeping a pet human to watch his children. They see it as evidence of sentimentality, of weakness. Do you want me to go? Eli asked, keeping his voice level. If I'm a liability, you are staying, Kael'thar interrupted firmly. Let them laugh. Let them dismiss you as a curiosity. Their contempt is useful. It means they underestimate you and, by extension, underestimate me. People reveal much when they think they face no threat. You want me to be your secret weapon by being openly dismissed? I want you to continue being exactly what you are, someone who protects my daughters without ulterior motive, who teaches them that strength and compassion are not mutually exclusive, who represents everything the Empire, has forgotten about honor. Kael'thar moved to his viewport, staring out at the stars. The Empire is dying, Eli. Not today, not tomorrow, but inevitably. When it falls, the only thing that will matter is who you chose to protect when everything else turned to ash. I am choosing my daughters, and I am choosing the human who proved that kindness still exists. That's a lot of weight to put on one broken-down mechanic. You carried the weight of my daughters' lives when you had every reason to turn them away. I think you can handle a few more expectations. Over the following weeks, life aboard the Crimson Talon settled into something resembling routine. Eli trained with Vex-Kar, worked with Torval on new drone designs, tutored the daughters in human history and culture, a subject they found endlessly fascinating, and slowly, painfully, began to feel like he belonged somewhere. The nobles still dismissed him. The crew still treated him with polite distance, but the daughters trusted him, Vex-Kar respected him, and Kael'thar, in his own reserved way, seemed to value his presence. It wasn't the life Eli had imagined during those 5 years on Threshold 9. It was stranger, more complicated, infinitely more dangerous, but it was a life that mattered, a life with purpose. A life where he could make a difference, even if that difference was measured in small moments. Lyseth's nightmares growing less frequent, Shi'ara's defensive walls slowly lowering, 2 girls learning that the galaxy wasn't only cruel and violent. One evening, as Eli sat with both daughters watching the fleet conduct maneuvers through the viewport, Shi'ara spoke thoughtfully. Eli, if you could go back to Threshold 9, back to your shop and your simple life, would you? Eli considered the question seriously. The old life had been easier in many ways. No politics, no expectations, no weight of protecting children who could be killed for their father's power. Just him and his machines and the slow march toward irrelevance. No, he said finally. I wouldn't go back. Why not? Because back there I was just surviving. Here I'm living. There's a difference. Lysith, half asleep against his side, murmured something in her native tongue. Shi'ara translated. She says, "You are the best thing that happened to us in the worst time of our lives." Eli felt his throat tighten. Tell her the feeling's mutual. Outside the viewport, the fleet moved in perfect formation, dozens of ships, thousands of warriors, all serving Kael'thar's vision of order in a chaotic galaxy. And somewhere in the middle of that vast military machine, one human mechanic sat with 2 alien children, teaching them that compassion mattered, that kindness had value, that the galaxy could be better than it was. It wasn't much, but sometimes, Eli thought, the smallest things carried the most weight. Sometimes saving 2 lives was enough to change the course of empires. He just hoped he was ready for what came next. The summons came without warning. Eli was in the engineering bay, elbow deep in a prototype drone's power coupling, when Vexcar appeared with an expression that suggested trouble. "The warlord requires your presence immediately. Bring nothing. Say nothing until spoken to, and for the ancestors' sake, try to look less like a grease-stained mechanic." Eli wiped his hands and followed the old warrior through the ship's corridors. They passed crew members who stopped and stared, unusual enough to make Eli nervous. Something was happening, something significant enough to disrupt the Crimson Talon's normal routine. Kael'thar's command chamber was full of people when they arrived. Senior officers, fleet commanders, and, most surprisingly, a delegation of Jarkai in ornate robes that screamed imperial court. At the center of the room stood the warlord himself, his posture rigid with barely controlled anger. "Ah," said one of the robed Jarkai, a female with silver markings and compound eyes that glittered with cold intelligence. "The human guardian. How quaint." Eli said nothing, following Vexcar's advice. Kael'thar's mandibles clicked sharply. "Lady Zakara, you have met my daughter's guardian, Eli Grant. This is Lady Zakara, first voice of the imperial court and personal representative of Empress Sylveth herself." The way Kael'thar said representative made it sound like an insult barely disguised as a title. Lady Zakara seemed to notice, her antennae twitching with amusement. "Lord Kael'thar and I were just discussing a matter of great importance," Lady Zakara said, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. "The Empress, in her infinite wisdom, has decreed that young Shiara, heir to the Third Fleet and daughter of our most distinguished warlord, should be educated at the Imperial Academy. A great honor, surely." The room fell silent. Eli might not understand all the political nuances, but he understood threat when he heard it. This wasn't an invitation. It was a hostage situation dressed in ceremony. "My daughter is receiving excellent education aboard my flagship," Kael'thar said, his voice dangerously quiet. "She learns fleet operations, tactical command, and the responsibilities of leadership. What could the Academy offer that she does not already receive? Perspective, my lord. Understanding of the broader empire beyond your formidable fleet. Connections with other noble houses. The polish and refinement expected of one who may someday command more than warships." Lady Zakara's mandibles curved in what might have been a smile. "Surely you want the best for your heir. What I want is for my daughter to remain safe. The last time imperial institutions were entrusted with her safety, assassins nearly killed her. A regrettable incident, thoroughly investigated and resolved. The guilty parties have been dealt with." Lady Zakara moved closer to Kael'thar, her voice dropping but still audible. "But that is precisely why the Academy makes sense. Under the Empress's personal protection, surrounded by the Empire's finest guards, young Shiara would be completely safe. Safer perhaps than aboard a warship that makes such tempting targets for your enemies." There it was, the threat barely concealed. "Send your daughter to us, or we cannot guarantee her safety. Refuse, and accidents might happen." It was elegant in its cruelty, and Eli felt his hands clenching into fists. "And my younger daughter?" Kael'thar asked. "Does the Empress require Liseth's presence as well?" "Liseth is still quite young. Perhaps in a few years when she has recovered from her ordeal. For now, Shiara alone would suffice to demonstrate your loyalty and cooperation with Imperial directives." Eli understood now. They were splitting the warlord's family, taking his heir as leverage, while leaving Liseth close enough to pretend this wasn't hostage-taking. It was brilliant and monstrous in equal measure. Kael'thar was silent for a long moment, his posture so still that Eli wondered if he was considering violence. Finally, the warlord spoke. "I will discuss this matter with my daughter. If she wishes to attend the Academy, I will not forbid it, but the choice is hers." Lady Zakara's antennae flattened slightly, surprise or perhaps annoyance. She'd clearly expected either immediate capitulation or refusal, not this middle path. "How too progressive of you, Lord Kael'thar. Very well. We shall await young Shiara's decision. I trust it will be the correct one." The Imperial delegation departed, leaving tension thick enough to cut with a blade. The moment they were gone, Kael'thar dismissed everyone except Vexcar, Eli, and his senior commanders. "They have her trapped," one commander said immediately. "If Shiara refuses, the court will paint her as disobedient, and by extension paint you as rebellious. If she accepts, they control your heir." "Yes," Kael'thar said flatly. "I am aware of the trap." The question is how to spring it without losing everything. My lord, Vexkar spoke carefully, there is precedent for guardians accompanying young nobles to the academy. If Shi'ara must go, she need not go alone. Kael'thar turned to Eli, and in that gaze, Eli saw the warlord measuring, calculating, deciding. You would send the human, another commander protested, to the imperial court? They would eat him alive. Perhaps, Kael'thar said. Or perhaps they would dismiss him as beneath notice, which would give him freedom to operate where a Jarkai guardian could not. He addressed Eli directly. What say you, human? You signed on to protect my daughters. This would be protection of a different sort, not from assassin's blades, but from political predators who smile while they devour you. Eli thought about Shi'ara's fierce determination, her hidden vulnerability, the way she tried so hard to be strong for everyone around her. The idea of sending her alone into that nest of vipers made his stomach turn. If she goes, I go, Eli said simply. You understand what you would face. The Imperial Court makes Threshold 9 look welcoming. They will mock you, dismiss you, try to break you in 1,000 subtle ways, and if they see you as a threat, they will have you killed without hesitation or consequence. Sounds familiar. I'll manage. Kael'thar's mandibles clicked. Approval or resignation, Eli couldn't tell. Then it is settled. We speak with Shi'ara, present the situation honestly and let her decide. But know this, if my daughter goes to the academy and anything happens to her, I will hold the Empress personally responsible. Let Lady Zekara carry that message back to her mistress. Shi'ara took the news exactly as Eli expected, with outward calm and inward fury. They gathered in her chambers, Kael'thar, Eli, Vexkar, and Liseth, who insisted on being present despite her youth. They want to take me hostage, Shi'ara said flatly. Let us call it what it is. Yes, Kael'thar replied, not bothering to soften the truth, but hostage-taking requires both parties to acknowledge the leverage. If you go willingly, as if attending the academy were your choice and desire, it diminishes their power. And if I refuse? They will find other ways to pressure us, other targets, other methods. The court is nothing if not creative in its cruelty. Kael'thar moved to the viewport, his massive form silhouetted against the stars. I will not lie to you, daughter. There are no good choices here, only degrees of bad. Shi'ara was quiet for a long moment, her young mind working through implications that would challenge adults twice her age. If I go, she said finally, Eli comes with me. That was already decided, Kael'thar confirmed. And Liseth stays here, protected by father and the fleet. Yes. Shi'ara looked at her sister, at Eli, at her father. Then I will go, not because the court commands it, but because refusing serves no purpose except to satisfy my pride. Pride is expensive, and I prefer to spend my currency on things that matter. Liseth made a distressed sound, moving to her sister's side. You cannot leave, not after everything. We are supposed to stay together. We will stay together in the ways that matter, Shi'ara said gently, taking her sister's hands. In here, she touched Liseth's chest, where her heart would be if Jarkai anatomy worked like human anatomy. Distance changes nothing about what we mean to each other. That is a lie adults tell children to make separation hurt less. Yes, Shi'ara agreed, but it is also true. Both things can be real at once. Eli watched this exchange and felt his chest tighten. These were children, young, traumatized, still processing their mother's death, and now they were being torn apart by political machinations they had no part in creating. It was wrong in fundamental ways that went beyond politics or power. When do we leave? Eli asked Kael'thar. 3 days. Lady Zekara's delegation departs then, and you will travel with them. I am sending Vexkar and a small security detail as well, officially as honor guard, unofficially as insurance. The court will know that my warriors watch over my daughter, and any harm that comes to her will be answered swiftly. Will that be enough to keep her safe? No, but it will make her killers think twice, which buys time and options. Kael'thar turned from the viewport. Eli, you must understand something. At the academy, you will have no official status. To the court, you are a curiosity, a pet beneath their notice. Use this. Learn what you can. Watch for threats. Be what humans do best. Adaptable, unexpected, underestimated. I'm a mechanic, not a spy. You are whatever you need to be to keep my daughter alive. That is your only mission. Everything else is secondary. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Eli received crash courses in Imperial protocol from Vexkar, learned the names and faces of major court players from Kael'thar's intelligence officers, and spent his spare time with both daughters, trying to prepare Shi'ara for what was coming while reassuring Lyseth that separation wasn't abandonment. "You must be careful," Vexkar warned during one of their last training sessions. "The Academy students are all noble-born, raised in intrigue and competition. They will see Shi'ara as a threat, the warlord's heir, powerful and connected. They will try to break her, socially, if not physically. And me? You they will ignore or mock. Use it. Observe everything. Trust no one except those who came with us from the fleet. The court has informants everywhere, and loyalty is a commodity bought and sold daily." On their last night aboard the Crimson Talon, Eli found Lyseth sitting alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars with a kind of desperate intensity. "Can't sleep?" Eli asked, settling beside her. "I do not want Shi'ara to go. I know it is childish. I know it serves no purpose, but I cannot help the feeling." "That's not childish. That's human. Well, you know what I mean. Will you truly be able to protect her? The court is full of people who have spent their entire lives learning to hurt others without leaving marks. How can you stand against that?" Eli was quiet, considering his answer carefully. "I don't know if I can, but I'll try, and sometimes trying is all we have." "That is not very reassuring." "No, but it's honest." Eli put his arm around her shoulders. "Your sister is stronger than you think. She's scared right now, but fear doesn't make her weak. It makes her careful, and I'll be there to help her navigate the things she can't handle alone." "And who will help you navigate the things you cannot handle alone?" "I'll figure it out. I usually do." Lyseth leaned against him and they sat in silence for a while, watching the stars move past. Finally, the young girl spoke again. "Eli, if something happens to Shi'ara, if the court harms her despite your protection, what will you do?" "Whatever I have to, no matter the cost. Even if it means your death." "Even then?" Lyseth pulled back to look at him, her compound eyes reflecting the starlight. "You humans are very strange. You die so easily, yet you throw your lives away for others with barely a thought. Is it bravery or foolishness?" "Probably both. Maybe there's not much difference." The departure came too soon. Eli stood in the docking bay with a small bag of belongings, his few possessions worth taking, and watched as Kael'thar said goodbye to his daughter. The warlord's usual stoic demeanor cracked, just slightly, as he held Shi'ara close. "You are stronger than they know," Kael'thar told her. "Remember that. You carry the blood of warriors, the wisdom of your mother, and the support of all who serve our house. The court cannot break what will not bend. I will make you proud, father." "You already have. Every day of your life you already have." Lyseth's goodbye was harder. Tears that the young girl tried desperately to hide, promises to write and communicate and stay connected despite the distance. Shi'ara maintained her composure until the very end, when she whispered something to her sister in their high tongue that made Lyseth nod fiercely. Then it was time. Eli, Shi'ara, Vexkar, and 3 other warriors boarded Lady Zekara's diplomatic vessel. The ship was beautiful in the way imperial things always were, sleek, expensive, decorated with precious metals and stones that served no purpose except to display wealth. Lady Zekara greeted them with false warmth. "Welcome, young Shi'ara. I trust you are eager to begin your education." "I am eager to serve the Empire as best I can," Shi'ara replied, her tone perfectly neutral. "How diplomatic of you. You will do well at the Academy." Lady Zekara's gaze slid to Eli. "And the human comes along. How charming. Do try not to embarrass yourself too badly, little guardian. The court has high standards." Eli said nothing. He'd learned that silence often said more than words ever could. The journey to the imperial capital took 5 days. During that time, Eli observed everything. The way Lady Zekara's servants moved with practiced deference, how conversations stopped when he entered rooms, the subtle tension between various members of the delegation that spoke of competing loyalties and hidden agendas. Shi'ara handled it all with remarkable poise, conversing politely when required, studying when permitted, never showing the fear Eli knew she felt. But at night, in the privacy of their quarters, her mask slipped. "I'm terrified," she admitted on the 3rd night. "Not of pain or death, I can face those, but of failing father, of shaming our house, of being broken by people who smile while they destroy you." "You won't fail," Eli said. "You're too stubborn for that. Stubbornness is not enough against an institution designed to reshape noble children into obedient servants of the Empire." "Then don't be obedient. Be yourself. Be the girl who survived assassination and hunted assassins. Be the daughter of the butcher of six who learned that compassion matters more than conquest. That's not something they can break or reshape. That's who you are at your core. Shi'ara looked at him with those two old eyes. "Oh, you truly believe that?" "I do, and I'll be there to remind you when you forget." On the fifth day they arrived at the imperial capital, a massive space station called the Heart of the Empire, orbiting the Empress's homeworld. It was a city in space, home to millions, the center of power for a realm that spanned hundreds of systems. As their ship docked, Eli looked out at the gleaming towers and thought about how far he'd come from Threshold 9, from his grimy repair shop and his quiet desperation. He'd wanted to disappear, to matter to no one, to simply survive until death took him. Instead, he was walking into the most dangerous place in the galaxy, tasked with protecting a child from enemies who wielded smiles as weapons and turned politics into art. "Ready?" Vexkar asked beside him. "Not even close," Eli admitted. "Good. Overconfidence would have made you useless. Fear keeps you sharp." They disembarked into a world of crystal and gold, of aliens in finery that cost more than worlds, of power so concentrated it warped everything around it. And somewhere in this beautiful, terrible place, Eli would have to figure out how to keep one stubborn girl alive and whole. He'd done impossible things before. Survived Threshold 9, built a combat drone from garbage, protected 2 princesses from trained assassins. This couldn't be any harder, could it? The Imperial Academy was beautiful in the way poisonous flowers were beautiful, elegant, captivating, and designed to hide the danger within. The sprawling complex occupied an entire sector of the Heart of the Empire station, its halls decorated with crystalline sculptures and murals depicting the Empire's glorious history of conquest and expansion. Eli hated it on sight. "Welcome to the Academy," announced the headmaster, an ancient Jarkai male whose carapace bore the scars of what must have been a legendary military career. "I am Master Tethval, young Shi'ara. You honor us with your presence. Your father's reputation precedes you, as does his formidable legacy." The way he said "formidable" made it clear that Kael'thar's reputation was not entirely welcome here. The Academy served the Empire, and Kael'thar represented power that operated slightly outside Imperial control. "I am honored to be here," Shi'ara replied with perfect diplomatic neutrality. "I hope to learn much." "Oh, you will learn a great deal. The Academy teaches many lessons, some from books, others from experience." Master Tethval's gaze shifted to Eli. "And this is your human?" "My guardian, Eli Grant." "How progressive. We've never had a human guardian at the Academy before." "This should prove educational for everyone involved." The headmaster's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or disdain. "You understand, of course, that guardians have limited access to Academy facilities? You may reside in the guardian quarters, escort your charge to and from classes, but you cannot attend lessons or interfere with her education." "Understood," Eli said simply. "Excellent. Then let us proceed with the orientation." The tour revealed a campus that was part university, part military installation, part social battlefield. Students, all young Jarkai from noble families, moved through the halls in small groups, their interactions carefully choreographed dances of status and rivalry. They wore uniforms that somehow managed to display their house allegiances while maintaining institutional conformity. Every single one of them stopped to stare at Shi'ara as she passed. "The warlord's daughter," Eli heard whispered in the formal high tongue. "They say she survived the Crimson Hand. They say a human protected her. How embarrassing. I heard her mother died like a common soldier, fighting assassins in corridors. No dignity, no grace. Kael'thar must be losing his edge if he cannot even protect his own family." Shi'ara's antennae remained perfectly still, the Jarkai equivalent of a poker face, but Eli saw the slight tension in her shoulders. Every word was designed to wound, and they were hitting their marks. The dormitories were segregated by status and house allegiance. Shi'ara was assigned quarters in the High Noble section, a suite of rooms that would have been luxurious anywhere except here, where they were merely adequate compared to other students' accommodations. Eli's guardian quarters were adjacent but separate, connected by a door that could be locked from either side. The room was small, functional, with none of the decorative excess found elsewhere. It sent a clear message. Guardians were servants, and servants didn't deserve luxury. "You will find the Academy has its own rhythms," Master Tethval said, as they concluded the tour. Classes begin at dawn cycle. Meals are communal, taken in the Great Hall. Social gatherings are encouraged. Networking is as important as academic achievement. Young Shi'ara, I trust you will represent your house with distinction. I will do my best, Master. See that you do. The Empire expects much from those born to power, fail to meet those expectations, and, well, history is unkind to disappointing heirs. With that ominous note, the headmaster departed, leaving Eli, Shi'ara, and Vexkar alone in the suite. The moment the door sealed, Shi'ara's composure cracked. She moved to the window, a real window, not a viewport, and stared out at the station's interior, at the thousands of lights representing millions of lives, all orbiting the Empire's seat of power. They already hate me, she said quietly. Did you hear them, the whispers? I heard, Eli confirmed. They're testing you, probing for weakness. That's what bullies do. These are not bullies. These are children of the Empire's most powerful families, trained from birth in manipulation and social warfare. They will tear me apart piece by piece, and they will make it look like I destroyed myself. Vexkar moved to stand beside her. Then we must ensure you give them no openings, no weakness to exploit, no vulnerability to target. I am surrounded by openings and vulnerabilities. I am the youngest here, the newest, the one whose mother just died, and whose father is barely tolerated by the court. I am a target painted bright and begging to be struck. Eli sat on the edge of a chair. So don't try to hide the target. Own it. Yeah, your mother died protecting you. Yeah, you survived assassination. Yeah, your father is powerful enough to make the Empire nervous. Those aren't weaknesses. Those are proof you come from strength. Let them whisper. Let them test. And when they push back harder. Shi'ara turned to look at him. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, it's just straightforward. These kids have been raised in luxury, taught that status matters more than survival. You've been raised by a warlord and survived real threats. You're tougher than they are. You just need to remember that when they try to convince you otherwise. And if remembering is not enough, then we adapt, together. That's why I'm here. The first real test came the next morning at breakfast. The Great Hall was exactly as pretentious as Eli had expected. Vaulted ceilings, long tables arranged by house and status, servers moving with practiced efficiency. Hundreds of young Jarkai filled the space with their clicking conversations and careful social positioning. Shi'ara entered with Eli a respectful 2 steps behind her, as was proper for guardians. Every conversation stopped. Every compound eye turned to assess the newcomer. The warlord's daughter, someone announced unnecessarily. How gracious of her to join us common nobles. Shi'ara held her head high and moved to an empty section of table. Eli started to follow, but a Jarkai student, male, with the golden markings of high nobility, stepped into his path. Guardians eat in the servants' hall, the student said, not with their betters. My guardian eats where I eat, Shi'ara said clearly, her voice carrying through the hall. Or I do not eat at all. The student's mandibles clicked in amusement. How sentimental. Your father's influence, I suppose. Everyone knows Kael'thar has gone soft, keeping humans as pets and coddling his children instead of raising them properly. The hall went silent. This was a direct insult, one that demanded response. Eli tensed, ready to intervene if needed, but Shi'ara surprised him. She stood slowly, drawing herself to her full height, still small compared to most students, but radiating something that made several nearby nobles step back involuntarily. You speak of my father, Shi'ara said quietly, dangerously. The butcher of 6, the conqueror of the outer reaches, the commander who has never lost a battle in 30 years of warfare. You, whose name I do not even know, call him soft? The golden-marked student faltered slightly. I merely suggest that... You suggest nothing. You insult everything, my father, my house, my guardian, who saved my life while warriors supposedly superior to humans died in the attempt. Shi'ara moved closer to the student, and there was something in her young face that reminded Eli powerfully of Kael'thar. I am new here. I am young. I am vulnerable in many ways. But I am also my father's daughter, and I learned from watching him that respect is earned through strength, not granted through courtesy. So let me be very clear. Insult my house again, and you will learn exactly how soft the warlord's family truly is. The student stared at her, compound eyes wide. Around them, other students watched with expressions ranging from shock to approval to carefully hidden delight at the drama. Finally, the golden-marked student stepped aside. My apologies, Lady Shi'ara. I spoke without thinking. Yes, you did. Shi'ara returned to her seat, and Eli followed, settling beside her with studied casualness. As breakfast proceeded and conversation resumed, Eli leaned close to Shiara. "That was dangerous. That was necessary," she replied quietly. "Show weakness here, and I am finished. Father taught me that predators respect strength, so I showed them strength. You showed them you can fight. That's not the same thing. It is to them, and for now that will suffice." Over the following weeks, Eli watched Shiara navigate the Academy's social waters with a mixture of pride and concern. She attended classes in imperial history, military strategy, political theory, and xenobiology. She excelled academically. Her tutors aboard the Crimson Talon had prepared her well, but the true curriculum was happening outside the classrooms. The other students tested her constantly. Small insults disguised as jokes. Invitations to social gatherings that were actually traps designed to humiliate. Rumors spread about her family, her past, her worthiness to be considered among the Empire's elite. Shiara handled most of it with careful poise, but Eli saw the toll it took. She slept poorly, ate less than she should, and spent her free time studying obsessively, as if academic achievement could shield her from social warfare. Eli's role was frustratingly limited. He could escort her, stand guard, be present, but he couldn't fight her battles for her. The few times he tried to intervene, Shiara stopped him with sharp efficiency. "I must handle this myself," she insisted, after one particularly cruel incident where several students had mocked her mother's death in her hearing. "If you protect me from every insult, I become the warlord's daughter who needs a human to defend her. That narrative destroys me faster than any insult could. So I just watch you suffer. You watch me survive. There is a difference." The breaking point came 6 weeks into their stay. Shiara was invited to a gathering in the Academy's private gardens, an exclusive social event hosted by some of the most powerful student families. It was clearly a trap, but refusing would have been seen as weakness. "I have to go," Shiara said, preparing for the evening. "Then I'm coming with you. Guardians are not permitted at student social events. Then I'll watch from a distance. I'm not letting you walk into that alone." Shiara started to argue, then seemed to recognize the futility. "Very well, but maintain distance. I need to handle this without appearing dependent." The garden was beautiful. Real plants, real soil, real water features, all maintained at enormous expense in the artificial environment of the station. Dozens of young nobles mingled under soft lighting, their conversations a symphony of political maneuvering and social positioning. Eli found a spot on the garden's edge where he could observe without being obvious about it. Vexkar materialized beside him. The old warrior had been shadowing Shiara as well, though more subtly than Eli could manage. "This is a trap," Vexkar said quietly. "Look at the positioning. The primary hostess is Lady Kael'thar, daughter of the Empress's chief advisor. Her friends surround her like an honor guard. Shiara is being led to the center, isolated from allies. Should we intervene? Not yet. The moment we step in, Shiara loses all credibility. We watch, we wait, and if it turns violent, we act. It didn't turn violent. It was so much worse than violence." Lady Kael'thar greeted Shiara with false warmth, offered her refreshments, introduced her to other students. Everything seemed pleasant, civilized. Then, as if casually, Lady Kael'thar began asking questions. "Tell me, Shiara, is it true your mother died fighting in corridors, like a common soldier?" "My mother died protecting her children," Shiara replied carefully. "There is no shame in that." "Of course not, though one wonders why a lady of her station was forced to fight personally. Did your father not provide adequate security?" The trap was springing. Other students gathered closer, sensing blood in the water. "My father provided all that could be provided," Shiara said. "The attack was unprecedented." "Unprecedented, or merely unexpected because your father has grown careless. They say the butcher of 6 is not what he once was, that he has grown soft, distracted by sentiment and affection, that his power wanes while he plays at being a family man." Shiara's antennae flattened, anger barely controlled. "My father commands the 3rd Fleet. His power is absolute." "Is it? Then why does the Empress summon him like a disobedient child? Why does she require your presence here at the Academy? It seems to me that absolute power requires no such supervision." The crowd murmured agreement. This was the real attack, not against Shiara personally, but against Kael'thar's position, his reputation, his authority. And Shiara, young and still learning, was being used as the weapon. "The Empress honors me with this opportunity," Shiara said, but her voice wavered slightly. "It is not supervision, it is education." Call it what you like, dear. We all know what it truly is. Lady Kael'thar moved closer, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that everyone could hear. Tell me, do you ever wonder if your father's enemies were right? If perhaps your mother died because the great Kael'thar was too busy playing warlord to properly protect his family? If you and your sister are alive today not because of your father's strength, but despite his weakness? That was the step too far. Shi'ara's entire body went rigid, and Eli saw something in her expression crack. Not anger, something deeper. Doubt. The terrible, corrosive doubt that maybe, just maybe, the cruelest words contained truth. Eli moved before he'd consciously decided to. He crossed the garden in quick strides, ignoring the shocked gasps as a human, a guardian, a servant, dared to intrude on a noble gathering. Shi'ara, he said clearly, your father is on the comm. He says it's urgent. It was a lie, and everyone knew it was a lie, but it gave Shi'ara an exit that preserved some dignity. She grasped at it like a drowning person finding solid ground. I must take this call, she said, her voice barely steady. Please excuse me. She turned and walked away, Eli at her side. Behind them, Lady Kael'thar's laughter echoed through the garden, accompanied by dozens of others. They made it to Shi'ara's quarters before she collapsed. Not physically, her legs remained steady, her posture remained upright, but emotionally. Everything she'd been holding back for 6 weeks came pouring out in a flood of grief and rage and shame. They are right, she said, her voice breaking. Mother died because we were vulnerable, because father could not protect us, because we are weak points in his armor, and his enemies know it. That's not true, Eli said firmly. Then why are we here? Why did the Empress demand my presence, if not to demonstrate father's inability to keep us safe? Why am I trapped in this beautiful prison while my sister suffers alone, while our house is diminished, while father is slowly strangled by politics he cannot fight with warriors? She sank onto a chair, her small form shaking. I cannot do this, Eli. I am not strong enough. I am just a child pretending to be an heir, and everyone sees through the pretense. Eli knelt beside her, waiting until she looked at him. You're right. You are a child, but that doesn't make you weak. You know what makes you weak? Giving up. Letting them win, believing their lies about your mother, your father, yourself. How do I fight lies that feel like truth? You remember what is actually true. Your mother loved you enough to die for you. Your father loves you enough to tear the empire apart if you're harmed. And you are strong enough to have survived assassination, grief, and 6 weeks at this hellhole institution without breaking until now. That's not weakness, Shi'ara. That's courage. Courage, she repeated bitterly. What good is courage against words designed to destroy? Courage is what lets you stand back up after words knock you down. It's what lets you face tomorrow knowing today was terrible, but tomorrow might be better. It's what your mother showed when she fought assassins. What your father shows when he faces the court. What you've been showing every single day since you arrived here. Shi'ara was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then in a very small voice, I miss my mother. I miss Lizeth. I miss feeling safe. I know, kid, I know. If I tell you something, will you promise not to share it? Not even with father. I promise. Sometimes I wish the assassins had succeeded. Not because I want to be dead, but because then I would not have to carry this weight. Then I would not have to be strong and brave and worthy. I could just stop. Eli felt his heart break. He'd heard those words before, in his own voice, during the dark years after Sarah died. He knew the shape of that particular darkness, understood its terrible logic. Listen to me, he said gently but firmly. Those thoughts are lying to you. They're your brain trying to escape pain by suggesting the ultimate escape. But they're lies. Your mother didn't die so you could wish yourself dead. She died so you could live, so you could grow up, so you could become someone who makes the galaxy better just by existing in it. What if I cannot become that person? Then you become whatever person you can be, and that'll be enough. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be invincible. You just have to keep trying, keep surviving, keep getting back up when people like Lady Kael'thar knock you down. Shi'ara leaned against him, a gesture of trust that still surprised Eli every time it happened. Thank you, Eli, for lying to extract me from the garden, for staying even when I told you to maintain distance, for reminding me why I am fighting. That's what I'm here for. They sat in silence for a while, guardian and charge, human and Jarkai, 2 people trying to survive in a place designed to break them. Outside, the heart of the empire continued its infinite dance of power and politics, of beautiful cruelty and elegant destruction. But in this small room, for this quiet moment, Shi'ara was safe, and sometimes Eli thought. That was the only victory that mattered. The message came in the middle of the night, 3 weeks after the garden incident. Eli was jolted awake by urgent knocking, Vexkar's distinctive rhythm that meant trouble. "The warlord is here," Vexkar said the moment Eli opened the door. "Not officially, not announced, but he is on the station and he demands to see his daughter immediately." Eli was fully awake in seconds. "How?" "The court controls all incoming traffic. They'd never allow—" "Lord Kael'thar does not ask permission. He arrives, and the galaxy adjusts." Vexkar's mandibles clicked grimly. "But his presence here is dangerous. If the Empress perceives it as a threat, as a breach of protocol, she may act against him. We must move quickly." They woke Shi'ara and moved through the Academy's corridors with practiced stealth. The station's night cycle meant minimal foot traffic, and Vexkar knew routes that avoided surveillance. Within 20 minutes they reached a private docking bay, one of the Academy's restricted areas, now secured by Kael'thar's warriors. The warlord stood in the center of the bay, still in his full battle armor, as if he'd come directly from a combat zone. Behind him loomed a dozen of his personal guard, their weapons ready, their postures suggesting they'd kill anyone who tried to stop them. "Father!" Shi'ara breathed, breaking into a run. She crashed into Kael'thar's arms, and the massive warrior held his daughter with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so fearsome. "Little one," Kael'thar said softly, "I have received disturbing reports. Vexkar has been sending encrypted messages. He tells me you suffer. He tells me the Academy tears at you piece by piece. Is this true?" Shi'ara pulled back, trying to compose herself, trying to be the strong heir she thought her father needed. "I am managing, father. The Academy is challenging, but I am learning much. Do not lie to me." Kael'thar's voice was gentle but firm. "I am your father before I am a warlord. I need the truth, Shi'ara, not the diplomatic answer, not the brave facade, the truth." Something in Shi'ara broke then, the last wall she'd been maintaining, the final pretense of strength. "I hate it here," she whispered. "Every day is a battle I do not know how to fight. They attack with words, with implications, with social structures I do not understand. They mock Mother's death. They question your power. They tear at everything I am until I do not know who I am anymore. And you have been enduring this alone? Carrying this weight without calling for help? You taught me to be strong, to never show weakness, to stand against any challenge without flinching." "No." Kael'thar knelt, bringing himself to eye level with his daughter. "I taught you to survive. I taught you to be strategic, but I never taught you that strength means suffering in silence. I never taught you that asking for help is weakness. If I gave you that impression, then I failed as a father." He stood, turning to face his warriors. "Secure this bay. No one enters or leaves without my permission." Then Kael'thar turned to Eli. "You, human, you have been reporting to Vexkar?" "No, my lord," Eli said carefully. "I didn't know he was sending messages." Vexkar stepped forward. "I took it upon myself to inform you of the situation. The human protected her physically, but he could not protect her from the court's psychological warfare. I believed you needed to know." "You believed correctly." Kael'thar moved closer to Eli, his massive form intimidating even without hostile intent. "Eli Grant, you have been with my daughter through this ordeal. Tell me honestly, how close is she to breaking?" Eli met the warlord's gaze. "Close enough to scare me. She's strong, but this place is designed to break people exactly like her. Another month, maybe 2, and I don't know if there'd be anything left to save. Then it is fortunate I came when I did." Kael'thar turned back to Shi'ara. "Daughter, I am withdrawing you from the Academy, effective immediately." Shi'ara's antennae shot up in alarm. "Father, no. If I leave now, it proves them right. It proves I am weak, that you are weak, that our house cannot withstand court pressure. The political damage is irrelevant compared to your well-being. I will not sacrifice my daughter on the altar of imperial politics. I have already lost your mother to this game. I will not lose you as well. But the Empress, Kael'thar said, his voice hardening, will accept my decision or face consequences she is not prepared to endure. Let me be clear. I have tolerated much from the court. The assassination attempt, the forced enrollment, the systematic psychological torture disguised as education. But my tolerance has limits, and those limits have been reached." A new voice spoke from the bay's entrance. "How dramatic, Lord Kael'thar. You always did have a flair for theatrical gestures." Lady Zakara entered, flanked by Imperial guards. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her antennae positions suggested anger barely controlled. Unauthorized military presence in the heart of the empire, removal of a student without proper procedures, threats against the Empress herself. These are serious charges, warlord. These are facts, not charges, Kael'thar replied. My daughter is leaving with me. You may record this as voluntary withdrawal or forced extraction. I care not which. The Empress will permit whatever I decree, or she will discover exactly how much she relies on my fleet's loyalty. Tell me, Lady Zekara, does the court truly wish to test whether the Third Fleet answers to the Empire or to me? The Bey fell silent. This was the threat that had always lurked beneath Kael'thar's relationship with the Empire. The possibility that he might choose his family over his sworn loyalty, that he might break rather than bend. Lady Zekara clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. This is treason you speak of. This is parenthood. Call it what you will. My daughter leaves with me. That is not negotiable. And if the Empress decides to make an example of you, if she orders your arrest, your fleet's disbandment, your house's destruction, then the Empire will burn. Kael'thar's voice was calm, factual, as if discussing weather patterns. I have commanded the Third Fleet for 30 years. My warriors are loyal to me personally. My allies among the lesser houses outnumber the court's supporters. If the Empress pushes me to rebellion, she will get rebellion. And when the civil war ends, there will be no empire left for anyone to rule. You would destroy everything over one child's discomfort at school? I would destroy everything to protect my family. That is the difference between us, Lady Zekara. You see people as assets, tools, game pieces. I see my daughter as someone I love more than empires or glory or my own life. If the court cannot understand that, then the court is more broken than I realized. Lady Zekara was silent for a long moment, calculating, assessing. Finally she spoke. The Empress will not be pleased. The Empress is rarely pleased. She will survive her displeasure. This will have consequences, Lord Kael'thar. Political ones, military ones. The court does not forgive defiance. Then let them plot their revenge. I have faced assassins, rival warlords, and the vacuum of space itself. I am not afraid of courtiers who have never held a weapon or made a decision that mattered. Kael'thar turned to his daughter. Shiara, gather your belongings. We depart within the hour. Father, Shiara said quietly, I understand what you are sacrificing for me. The political capital, the court's goodwill, your relationship with the Empire. I am not worth this cost. Kael'thar knelt again, taking his daughter's hands in his massive ones. You are worth everything, every cost, every sacrifice, every consequence. Your mother knew that. It is why she gave her life for you. And if the galaxy does not understand that children are more valuable than politics, then the galaxy can learn or burn. I care not which. Shiara's composure finally shattered completely. She collapsed against her father, and for the first time since the assassination she wept. Not the controlled, hidden tears she'd allowed herself in private, but the deep, wrenching sobs of a child who'd been forced to be strong for far too long. Kael'thar held her, whispering in their formal high tongue, words that Eli didn't catch but understood anyway. Comfort, love, the absolute certainty that she was safe, protected, valued beyond measure. Eli looked away, giving them privacy, and found Lady Zekara watching him with an unreadable expression. You, she said, the human guardian. This is partially your doing, is it not? I protected her, Eli said. That's my job. You reported her suffering to Vexakar? I didn't need to. He saw it himself. But you did not stop it. You allowed her to endure weeks of torment when you could have contacted the warlord directly. She asked me not to. She wanted to prove herself. I respected that choice. Lady Zekara's mandibles clicked softly. How very human of you, to respect a child's foolish pride instead of doing what was actually necessary. Your species' sentimentality never ceases to perplex me. My species' sentimentality kept your species' heir alive when professional assassins tried to kill her. Maybe you should perplex over that instead. For just a moment, something like respect flickered in Lady Zekara's eyes. You are braver than you appear, human. Or more foolish. With humans, it is often difficult to distinguish between the two. She turned to Kael'thar. I will report this incident to the Empress. I will recommend clemency, given the circumstances. But, Lord Kael'thar, you have crossed a line tonight. The court will remember, and the court is patient in its vengeance. Let them remember. Let them plot. I have spent 30 years being patient with their games, their conspiracies, their endless schemes. No more. From this moment they know where I stand. Family first, empire second, and any threat to my family, any threat at all, will be answered with overwhelming force. You risk civil war. I risk nothing. They risk civil war if they continue targeting my children. The choice is theirs." Lady Zakara bowed slightly, not a gesture of submission, but of acknowledgement. Then she departed with her guards, leaving the bay to Kael'thar and his people. Within the hour, Shiara's belongings were gathered, and they were aboard Kael'thar's personal transport. Eli stood in the ship's observation deck, watching the heart of the Empire recede into the distance, and tried to process what had just happened. Vex'kar joined him. "You are troubled. Kael'thar just threatened civil war to extract his daughter from school. That's insane. That is love. In our culture, perhaps they are the same thing." Vex'kar was quiet for a moment. "Humans have a saying, do you not? About lines in sand, boundaries that cannot be crossed? Yeah, we say that's my line in the sand. Today the warlord drew his line, and he drew it in fire rather than sand, so that no one could mistake where it lies. His family is untouchable. Threaten them and face annihilation. It is a bold move, dangerous, but also clarifying. Now everyone knows exactly where they stand." Eli thought about that. About Kael'thar's absolute willingness to burn the galaxy for his children, about the look on Shiara's face when her father had told her she was worth everything. "I had a daughter once," Eli said quietly. "When she died, I wasn't there. I couldn't protect her, I couldn't save her. For 5 years I lived with that failure. And now I'm watching a father who refused to fail, who chose his child over politics, over power, over everything the galaxy told him mattered. And I'm realizing that maybe I'm not a failure after all. Maybe I just never got the chance to make the choice Kael'thar made today. You made that choice when you protected Shiara and Lyseth on Threshold 9. You gave away your future for them. That is the same choice, human, just made differently. The journey back to the Third Fleet took 3 days. During that time, Eli watched Shiara slowly return to herself, not the traumatized child from the academy, not the fierce warrior she tried to be, but something in between, someone finding balance. On the final day, she found Eli in the ship's small engineering bay, where he'd been tinkering with a malfunctioning sensor array just to keep his hands busy. "I wanted to thank you," Shiara said, "for the weeks at the academy, for staying even when I pushed you away, for reminding me who I was when I forgot. That's the job. It is more than the job, it is—" She paused, searching for words. "You are not Jarkai. You do not understand honor debt the way we do. But in our culture, what father did today, threatening war for family, that is the highest form of love. And what you did, protecting without expectation of reward, that is the purest form of honor. You have both given me gifts I cannot repay. You don't need to repay anything. Just be okay. That's all the payment I need. I am not okay, not yet, but I think with time I will be, and that is enough." When they finally reached the Crimson Talon, Lyseth was waiting in the docking bay. The younger girl had grown in the months they'd been apart. Not physically, but in some indefinable way that spoke of hardship survived and strength earned. The two sisters reunited with a collision that would have been violent if it weren't so full of relief and joy. They clung to each other, clicking in their high tongue, making promises Eli couldn't understand but felt in his chest anyway. Kael'thar watched his daughters with an expression of such profound love that Eli had to look away. This was private, sacred, the kind of moment that didn't need witnesses. Later, in the warlord's chambers, Kael'thar summoned Eli for a private audience. "The Empire will not forgive what I did," Kael'thar said without preamble. "They will see it as weakness exploited, as a warlord who can be manipulated through his family. They will test me, push me, try to find new ways to strike at what I love. What will you do? I will prepare. My fleet will expand. My alliances will strengthen. My daughters will be protected by forces so overwhelming that even the Empire will think twice before testing them again." Kael'thar paused. "And you, Eli Grant, will continue to guard them. Not with weapons or warriors, but with your strange human compassion, with your ability to see them as people before princesses. I can do that. I know. That is why you are irreplaceable." Kael'thar moved to his viewport, staring out at his assembled fleet. Dozens of warships, thousands of warriors, all prepared to follow him to war if necessary. "Do you understand what you have become, human? You are not just a guardian. You are proof that there is another way. That power does not require cruelty. That strength can coexist with compassion. That the mighty can still choose kindness. I'm just a mechanic who made some choices. No, you are the man who gave his last drone to 2 alien children. You are the man who stood between my daughters and death without hesitation. You are the man who reminded me that some things, some people, are worth any cost." Kael'thar turned from the viewport. "The Empire sees you as insignificant. They dismiss you as a sentimental pet. But I see the truth. You are dangerous precisely because you are not trying to be. You change things simply by being what you are. And what am I? You are hope, Eli Grant. In a galaxy that has forgotten what hope looks like, you are a reminder that it still exists, that kindness still matters, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose compassion over comfort." Eli didn't know what to say to that, so he simply nodded and left the warlord to his thoughts. That evening, Eli sat with both daughters in their chambers, watching the stars through the viewport. Liseth had fallen asleep against his side, exhausted from the day's emotions. Shi'ara remained awake, thoughtful, processing everything that had happened. "What you did on Threshold 9, Shi'ara said quietly, "when you gave us your drone. At the time, I did not understand it. I thought you were simply kind. But now I realize it was more than that. You gave away your hope, your future, everything that mattered to you, for strangers. You needed help. I could help. That's all. No, it is never that simple. You chose us. You chose to care about us when the galaxy said we did not deserve care. You chose compassion when cruelty would have been easier and safer." She looked at him with those two old eyes that had seen too much. "Father was right. You are dangerous. Because if one human mechanic can be that kind, that brave, that selfless, then maybe the galaxy's cynicism is a lie. Maybe caring still matters. Maybe love is stronger than power. I'm not that special, kid. I just did what I could. That is what makes it special. You did not do it for glory or recognition. You did it because it was right. And that, Eli Grant, is the most revolutionary act in the Empire." They sat in comfortable silence, two sisters and their human guardian, watching the infinite darkness of space lit by distant stars. Somewhere out there, the Empire continued its eternal dance of power and politics. Somewhere, enemies plotted revenge for perceived slights. Somewhere, the galaxy ground forward in its usual brutal fashion. But here, in this moment, 3 survivors of trauma and loss had found something precious: safety, family, the knowledge that they were valued not for their status or usefulness, but simply for being themselves. Eli thought about Threshold 9, about the broken man who'd lived in that repair shop, waiting to die. He thought about Sarah and the guilt he'd carried for 5 years. He thought about the moment he'd opened his door to 2 terrified children and made a choice that changed everything. He'd given away his last drone, expecting nothing in return. He'd protected 2 alien princesses from assassins and the Empire's cruelty. He'd survived the Academy's psychological warfare and emerged with his humanity intact. And now, impossibly, he was home. Not in a place he'd never see Earth again, but in a purpose. In the knowledge that he mattered, that his choices had weight, that kindness was not weakness, but the strongest thing he could offer. "Thank you," Liseth murmured in her sleep, her words barely audible. "For what?" Eli asked softly. "For staying, for caring, for being you." Eli looked down at the young Jarkai sleeping trustingly against him, at her sister watching the stars with hard-won peace in her eyes. He thought about Kael'thar's words, about being dangerous because he wasn't trying to be, about being hope in a hopeless place. Maybe that was enough. Maybe being a humble mechanic who chose compassion over survival, who gave everything for strangers, who refused to let cruelty win. Maybe that was the most important thing he could be. "You're welcome, kid," Eli whispered. "You're very welcome." Outside, the fleet moved in perfect formation through the void, protecting its own, ready to face whatever came next. And at its heart, one human guardian watched over 2 alien princesses, proving every day that the galaxy's cruelty was not inevitable, that kindness could survive even in darkness, that love, simple, stubborn, human love, was stronger than empires. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything. It was end.